I have one. Let he who is without racism deconstruct the first system.
Hi, this is Chris. This is Flip. We are going to talk about all the big to-do, whoop-a-doo-doo-doo. We're going to call this one Wilcox Schmilcox.
Oh, I should have listened to that thing. I meant to. I just haven't. I don't know. I just listened to an hour of Midnight Mormons talking about weird esoteric Satanism, weird wacky stuff. And I was like, that's probably way more entertaining than that Wilcox thing was.
It for
Would be.
sure is. Well, yeah. Well, I mean, the Wilcox thing is entertaining, but it's got to be made the biggest deal in the world.
Well, I mean, how much? Because the Wilcox thing is what, an hour or two long?
No, they did three. Which one? His actual?
No, his actual speech. Because, like, I
Yeah,
mean,
it's like
I'm
an hour and
guessing
a
that
half.
most of it was perfectly mundane Mormon stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't know. But was there like what, a 90-second portion where it gets all spicy?
Yeah. Do you know what the big deal is? You know what the big deal is. Right?
He said something about, maybe we shouldn't be asking why 1978. Why not every other time with every other person? And then people said, "Hey, you can't say that. You're a wicked person."
Yep.
Yeah, because then what he said wasn't racist. I mean, it wasn't any more racist than anything else in Mormonism. I guess I don't know what that's saying.
Well, I think that's what they're saying is that like Mormons have been denying that they ever say anything like this, and this is the great big smoking gun that they say stuff like this.
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe I've been out of it too long that none of it just seems.
I don't doubt that the people exist, but I've never in my Mormon life, in or out of the church, heard a Mormon justify racism on the basis of anything in Mormon doctrine. I've never, ever heard it or seen it. I've only ever heard people acknowledge, like, the doctrine is what it is.
Yeah, they just try to explain some past stuff. It's never any,
Yeah.
at least since I've
But,
been alive.
and again, like, I know that it's a big world and a big church, and there's all kinds of people in the world, but, like, I've never encountered that kind of overt racism in Mormonism. Meanwhile, John DeLynn is ashamed that he's white. He's racist all the time on every show, nonstop, and like, yeah, that this is one thing that bugs me so much about this accusation. I mean, and it's everywhere in society, where like the truckers, the fucking Canadian trucker, you're racist. Like, no, they're not. Meanwhile, like NPR is racist. There it is. Oh, speak of the devil. I didn't even plan that. NPR is super duper racist. All they're doing is race.
All day, every day, all the time. That's all it's been
Nonstop.
for the past 5 years.
Did you see that article I sent you about how, like, apparently 3 model years worth of Mazdas in the Seattle area, their radio was locked into NPR and couldn't be changed or turned off or anything?
Yeah, I saw that. I have it right here actually, but
Oh.
they're ridiculous. I mean, this is the answer could be more complex than you think. Shut up.
Well, no, then, like, and if you look at the title, like old classical normie liberals like us, like, do the principle of charity thing and be like, well, maybe I can imagine a thing where it's like, no, the actual text is just super duper racist.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, and they're gonna say
it's
so. It should be all sorts of stuff in
Yeah.
between. And I don't know what to choose. My girlfriend, she chooses one of these colors. Did I just say I have a friend that's
There's a guy's like, well, am I being white or am I being Filipina? As if those are, mutually exclusive propositions.
Listen to this.
I have to pick one.
This question right here is so funny. Oh, it's such an embarrassment. Most of like they so overthink about it all the time in every situation and every action that they expose their colored hand, their colored.
Well, I might be totally wrong about this, but if I'm not mistaken, I believe that, like, the reason the Simpsons are yellow is just that, in those days especially, but even today, like, the cheap way to get your animation covered was you would ship it to Korea. And when The Simpsons was just starting, they had no money. It was the Tracy Ullman show, and they shipped their animations to Korea and said, color please. It was like the discount package. You didn't get to pick. And, like, the colors that the Koreans chose is what it is. I think there's something like that. I could be totally wrong about that, but I know that kind of thing has happened, you know? In which case, I guess the Koreans are just, I mean, well, it's South Korea, and they've they're capitalists and allies of America, so that makes them white adjacent, and they're probably just internalizing the white supremacy, and that's why Homer Simpson is yellow.
So we talked about this last time a little bit, and I'm going to show the whole thing, but I talked about this lady at the end of it. This whole entire episode by Shortfatotaku. There's been a lot of different people who come out exposing and explaining about this situation. This video covers a lot of the different issues: money, how it was spent, who it was given to, as a
Yeah.
BLM. But this was even already 2 weeks ago. There's already been more exposed and more videos. I have another one.
Well, and I mean, the part of this that really bothers me is that, like, because it is becoming unambiguous that the whole thing is just a giant fraud.
Yeah.
But like,
But this
all
is
the
the
way at the
trick
very
is
beginning, like at the very, very
they
beginning,
were around since 2013. And if you
yeah,
tried to say the beginning 2013 or the beginning 2020, because most people thought they came into existence in 2020, and you
yeah.
tried to tell them already, like, this stuff already has tons of people calling it out as a sham organization. It has for
Well,
5 years.
no, in
And you
2013,
you had everybody's going, what are you talking about?
by 2014, you could call it a sham organization. Unambiguous, because the whole thing was founded on a big fat lie. Hands up, don't shoot.
Yeah.
Didn't happen. We know it didn't
Michael,
happen. Go read
as
the Justice
said by
Department
the
investigation.
Obama's Justice Department,
Yeah.
then there was another
Eric
person.
Holder. Yeah, there have been 5 like federal level investigations on the Ferguson on Michael Brown shooting.
Then there was somebody who
Hands up, don't
ran.
shoot is a lie. Like at this point, it's not a matter of opinion. It's not about a narrative. It's not any of this stuff. It just didn't happen. And in fact, like this idea that anybody was shot with their hands up saying don't shoot, like I don't know that there are any examples of that in our lifetimes of that's what happened. That somebody literally was surrendering to the police and was shot to death anyway. The police knew about it and said okay. It just simply hasn't ever happened.
There was kind of that white guy who was, remember, he was crawling on the
Daniel Shaver.
that's
Yeah.
the closest thing I've seen. But
Yeah, he's saying, begging, please don't shoot me. He's drunk and crying, begging, don't shoot me. And he's pulling his pants up because they're awkwardly falling off, and he gets shot several times by that guy. Yeah, and like in the guy's face, like they published his face. You can look this up. And he used his AR-15 style assault weapon to do it, and he had on the side of the gun, it was like all part of the investigation. There's pictures of it where like he had written on his long gun, his assault weapon, "You're f-" or something like that, and everything about it was like, oh god, like this was a bad shoot, except for the fact that because he went to trial and he got acquitted because like training wise, that cop didn't not follow training, but like you watch that thing, it's like that can't be the best way to handle that. But of course, it was a white guy. And so, yeah, and it was but like it's a white guy, so it literally doesn't matter.
Yeah.
As far as this BLM thing is concerned. But yeah, so from the very beginning, I was saying it's like, well, these guys are liars. Like, don't give your money to the liars. They're lying about police. They're lying about what happened to Michael Brown. They're lying about systemic racism. Like,
I went through it. I told people all through, right from the start of the George Floyd thing, of the BLM is not what you think it is. The big organization is not the same thing as that Mott and Bailey tactic of calling, Black Lives Matter. And then they play that sort of game, knowing that they're playing that sort of game to put you in the double bind. But all these different companies donating to it, every individual who donated to it, it all went down the tank. These people are being sued by people like Breonna Taylor's family, which are worried about Breonna Taylor's family. They're being, even Michael Brown's family, the hands up, don't shoot people, have been saying since all the way back then that they didn't give them 1 red cent or do anything for them.
They're using the images of their dead children to raise gajillions of dollars, and they've done nothing for the families of the actual victims.
And they're not the only ones. I mean, there's other people like Sean King, who is a separate thing, and I think he's kind of half disappeared, but the guy who's faking being black, like accepting donations. Anytime a bad thing happens to black people, this guy accepts donations. People are being so duped left and right by these things. and we're supposedly in this world where I saw Mormons and ex-Mormons alike fall all the way down the BLM tube. We got to give away money to these people who are playing on our sensibilities, on our morals or morality. Supposedly ex-Mormons, you're supposed to be super keen, aware of that sort of stuff, right?
No, at this point, if like, you know, if we lived in a totalitarian nightmare sphere, like on I don't know, GoFundMe, and they said your money must go, you have to choose. Your money can either go to BLM or the Corporation of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'm going Mormons.
No, me
Like,
too.
if I have to give my money to a weird religion pushing strange ideas about race, oh, Mormons every day, because they're
All day, every
way
day.
less harmless. Or no, wait, I've said that wrong. But
people
yeah,
get so mad about how much money they hold, but
yeah,
you always have to step back and look and say, but nobody's squandering it.
yeah,
Nobody's rolling around in Rolls Royces. There's a little bit of perks
yeah,
for some of those.
Yeah, and the church builds things, and
Yeah.
like, you know,
There's a
yeah,
little bit of perks for top general authorities, but really they're not, you
yeah.
know.
It's, I mean, yeah. So like the ex-Mormon criticism, it's like, it's lame that they don't just say how that works.
Yeah.
You know, it's dumb how they let missionaries go around and say like, oh, we have a lay clergy, nobody gets paid to be in an ecclesiastical position in Mormonism. Like, well, no, that's not true. You're playing a silly game, kind of like how John DeLynn plays a silly game with his tax situation.
Everyone stop your games. No more games. Just be
Yeah,
honest.
yeah, just say
Make your
what you're
money, do
doing.
your thing, say what you're doing, and we're cool.
You know, and that's the thing. It's like, because you're like, oh my, they live in a fancy house and they have security and they have an armored car and private transportation. It's like, frankly, I'm fine with that, because they run a big operation and that
Some of
makes
that
you a
armored
target.
car stuff, they
Yeah,
need it for
yeah.
sure.
Some of they need that, and also, like, you know, and they have families and they have kids, and like, you know, like this thing just happened to, like, there was a
And they're
little bit of
not
a stink
making,
where
for
um
$100 billion organization thing, they're not making more than John DeLynn is. Those guys
oh
do
yeah,
not make
no,
that much money
no. Like,
for.
I mean, yeah, they get a lot of perks in the sense that, you know, like, they get all kinds of amenities on church property. You know,
And people
talk
could say
about how
exactly what John DeLynn says. Most of them could say, I would be making much more doing my other thing. Almost all of them.
oh
Almost
yeah,
all of them. The last people who were hired out of positions that weren't hired, I mean, they were chosen out of positions that weren't mega money positions, were like Gordon B. Hinckley and Thomas S.
yeah.
Monson. Everybody since then has been pulled out of success
And
into the
even,
positions.
like, I mean, if as critical as you can be with all the available information, none of them have like abused it like the way, you know, that like Stalin did. You know, it's like the communists say like Stalin owned nothing but his pipe, his glasses, and his shirt, or something like that, you know. But it's like, well, yeah, but Stalin owned the USSR. You know, it's like, oh, he didn't own all those dachas,
Yeah.
but he got to use them, and only he got to use them. It was up to him how they got used, you know, like, so it's total BS. And like, nobody in Mormonism, like, since Brigham Young, has acted like that, you know, so it's not a fair criticism today. Meanwhile, like, John DeLynn takes the lion's share of his gay saving operation.
Yep. And I'll give the warning that I always give too to the Mormons, that money, all the ex-Mormons are so upset about all that money that you have. You could solve world hunger in a single day with all that money, because that's how that works.
Yeah.
But the concept I have and have had for a long while is that money is the ring. It's the ring that they're holding on to. They're precious. If they that money, that's the reason why John Larson, they say render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, is that if you start racking up all that sorts of stuff, those things are debts. They're debts to the society of the politics of that money system. And that money system is getting more political than ever about who can hold and maintain and use and how that money. And that is way more pressure than John DeLynn's podcast will ever be on them. So if you're somebody who wants them to liberalize, we'll use the word, you should want them to hold on to that money as hard and tight as they can.
New South Park touches on that.
Really? I
Yeah,
didn't
a
see
bit. Yeah,
yesterday.
like the whole. I mean, that, you know, like all South Park, it's got a few threads, but one of the threads is that, you know, Randy realizes he goes to a convention for weed growers, and of course the keynote is about, hey guys, diversity, we got to
Yeah.
get on board. And of course, it's South Park, so Randy does the stupid, extreme, self-serving thing. He's the archetype of the John DeLynn about
Yep.
like, I'm gonna go get my token, and
Mm.
and capitalize on it. And then of course, like, he gets at the end, the guy he brings on as a token ends up going off on his own, and of course Randy's all pissed off, like, how dare you get in on my racket? You know, yeah, no, they covered a lot of that stuff, but no, and it's happening everywhere, and that's why South Park, it's the most topical show ever.
It's woke ink and
Yeah,
lefties, you were supposed to be onto this stuff since forever. And how did you
yeah.
get doubly duped? You done been duped. This is what I likened to recent John DeLynn podcasts.
Saying that BLM was under threat, and that part of that threat was the mainstream media using black voices to discredit BLM activists like her.
There's a lot coming at us, and some of you have seen some things on social media. You've seen some attempts to discredit Black Lives Matter. I just want to also ask if you've seen or read Judas and the Black Messiah. And so I want us to just be really thoughtful and be students of history, and to dig deep and not believe everything that you read or see, no matter who it's coming from. So, there are people who are motivated by ego. There's people who are motivated by whoever they might
It
be.
just all sounds so familiar, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but also, like, I mean, that weird thing where she said, let's be students of histories and not believe everything we read, no matter who it comes from. Like, there's so much begging the question in everything they say. Like, I mean, it's one of my biggest pet peeves is listening to these people talk about history. Like, the communists at work would always say to me, like, when sometimes in response to what I would think were perfectly mundane things, but you don't know the real history of capitalism. Every time, what are you talking about? Tell me. Leaving me in the dark. But it's a bluff, obviously. But yeah, like, when they talk about, oh, you got to read history correctly, be students of history. It's like that scene from that Hail Caesar show.
Mm.
Where like, oh no, we're doing history and science here, don't you know?
It's economics. It's history. A little bit more of that stuff. A bunch of different people started doing it for articles. More and more and more came out. If you keep up with it, you can barely keep up with how.
Yeah, and a lot of people are pointing out that, like, the California Attorney General is looking into this, where it's like, you'd think if anybody would be friendly to BLM, it would be California, but even they are. Yeah, he's probably talking about it here.
Yeah, so this is a actual justice warrior, Sean. I don't know what his last name is, if he's ever even shared it, but good videos on all sorts of things, like different murders that happen from different angles that you're not getting from NPR.
Oh, yeah.
He's a graduate in criminal whatever.
The remarkable thing, like, he makes great videos and he does good research. But the really remarkable thing is that he demonstrates that, like, you don't need special skills and you don't need special access to find out what's up with any of this stuff. He's not doing anything that legitimate journalists couldn't and shouldn't be doing.
They should be sides of it that we are getting in our regular media, and we don't get these sides.
Well, yeah, perfect example. I mean, there's so many examples we could give of this, but like Breonna Taylor.
Yeah.
Like, it's a widely believed lie that Breonna Taylor was shot in bed by police who were serving a no-knock warrant at the wrong address.
Mm-hmm.
This is the standard narrative, and this is a story that was Reddit debunked inside of 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it hasn't ever been true. There was never any reason to believe that.
Mm-hmm.
But it got picked up and reported, and that's the standard narrative now.
It goes beyond that in the sense of he might cover things like your concept that a no-knock warrant is for sure more dangerous than a knock warrant, which even in that Breonna situation, it had a knock. And had there not been a knock, it might have been safer. They did knock. And,
there's the whole other thing about this that makes me crazy is that the world started yesterday. We keep talking about this, where the Breonna Taylor situation happens. And all of a sudden, the world's alive with all this talk about, like, what about no-knock warrants? What the hell? They're like, oh my God, the police can just go in there and assassinate somebody, blah, blah, blah. About 10 years ago in Ogden, Utah. I forget the guy's name because his name wasn't repeated 10,000 times. A white guy. Doesn't matter, except that it does to the left. but in this case, a white guy, Vietnam vet, grew some weed in his basement.
Yeah.
And by all accounts, he grew it for his own consumption. This was pre-medical marijuana. And somehow police got tipped off, and the police served a full-on no-knock raid warrant on him. And this guy, his defense was he didn't know it was the police. He thought it was somebody coming to rob him, because somebody got word that he grew some weed plants. And again, this isn't a huge thing. He had I think 5 plants. Anyway, he, just like in the Breonna Taylor case, fired back at the cops. Only in this case, he killed a cop. And I think he wounded another. He ended up being, I think, wounded. He ended up surrendering, being taken into custody and being prosecuted. And he committed suicide in jail awaiting prosecution. Now, the world started yesterday. So none of these people talking about Breonna Taylor, I just watched, I think it was Sean talking about how the Young Turks are covering this case that just happened in Minnesota.
The
but,
Amir one.
Yeah, but 10 years ago, it was the conservatives that were saying, hey, we can understand why a citizen, even a guy breaking the law, but even conservatives at this time were saying he's growing plants, there was nothing about him dealing. There was nothing about him. Why are we doing a full-on raid? This is a situation where they probably could have knocked on his door, and found a resolution that would make people happy. And it was conservatives making this case about, should we really be prosecuting this guy this hard? Shouldn't we rethink our tactics?
Well, right at the same time, another person, a white person, did die, and the reason they went to his house and searched his house and found nothing was because he was a gun owner. He owned guns. I forget that guy's name. I should be able to look it up, but the exact situation did happen to a white person right around the same exact time, and nobody cared about it.
Well, and it happens. I mean, the fact is that it happens with alarming frequency because it happens to more white people are killed by cops. Twice as many white people are killed by cops as blacks in whole numbers. So just in a matter of the way you mean, oh my, the way the media treats it, yet another black person dead at the hands of police. And they report it that way in this completely oblivious to reality. The facts literally don't matter. They will report it like that. You see that story reported, 2 white people died and you didn't hear about it.
In this situation, it's also left out that her boyfriend shot first, according to a black neighbor who was an ear witness. Yeah. But he also didn't get charged at all. He didn't get charged at all for standing his ground and shooting at people coming in through his door. So
and I mean, and this is one of those things where it doesn't matter, but I don't know if it ever came down to it, but I'm guessing that the warrant was legitimate. By all accounts, these people were absolutely involved in pretty serious drug trafficking. And
first off, there's people who did try to argue that they got the wrong house or they got the wrong person or whatever, but no, they meant to go there, and they had the warrant. The warrant was served on the house that they meant to go.
Breonna Taylor's name was on the warrant.
Yeah,
they had photographs of the boyfriend they were looking for, picking up packages that the police knew contained drugs. And again, this is all shit Reddit had figured out, while the New York Times was lying about what happened there and fomenting racial dissent across America for nefarious political purposes, as far as I'm concerned.
So Sean's got a lot of different stuff that examines. I mean, he goes over the Michael Brown case several different times in depth, not just one episode, several different times. All the also, court documents pulled, all that stuff.
Don't even and I mean, I guess unless you hate reading, don't even go to Sean if you don't want to hear some guy. The report, it's published by the Department of Justice. It's a PDF. Anybody can go read it. It's 88 pages long, I think. There's, and in all government things, there's the bullet points. If you don't want to go through all the details, you can get all the bullet points and find out that the whole hands up, don't shoot thing was always ever a big fat lie. In fact, we even know where exactly the lie started. The person who claimed that that Michael Brown was surrendering when he was shot was Michael Brown's accomplice in the strong arm robbery that Michael Brown committed earlier that day. There's video of that. Like, this isn't a claim. Yeah, it never went to court, but and let's all stress that, like, literally nobody's glad he's dead. Like, not even the hardcorest.
The police.
Yeah.
The police officer's life is over. I mean, he hasn't been able to do anything or get any job or be employed ever since.
He reportedly lives on donations from family, and he basically lives in hiding.
And beyond that, this is one of the things that drives me a little bit nuts about the qualified immunity or anything for police officers. But there has to be something in place when these people they're the ones running into the problems. They're the ones going to the problems. They're going to come across problems. There has to be something like qualified immunity in this world for people who have to run into these situations. But
see, you and I are having this discussion again from like our classical liberal understanding, you know, where we begin with the null hypothesis. And like you and I just sort of intuitively understand that like police don't just exist to oppress poor people to benefit the bourgeoisie. Like, and just like, you know, when somebody says that like the reason you've been having headaches and fighting with your girlfriend is that you've been reading Leah Remini articles in Us Weekly, you have to be Scientologist, right? And in order to believe that everything police do is to suppress poor people to the benefit of the rich, you have to be a Marxist. Like, you have to have that stupid religious idea as an article of faith. And like, this is one of those things that you realize that like trying to discuss statistics about policing in America with a leftist, a modern leftist, is exactly like trying to discuss DNA with a super believing Mormon.
Like it. It's impossible.
You know, where it's like, no, it's an article of faith. Like, you're not going to break that article of faith for them. Like, for them, you begin with the assumption that policing is racist, and it can only be racist. And so the stats, none of it matters.
Even getting this evidence, the evidence is off the table. Evidence searching is racist. Trying to falsify a situation or find out the truth of a situation is racist in itself.
And we have real world examples of this where, like, for example, like I think it's in the last couple of years where in San Francisco, they stopped publishing video of suspects in crimes. And they said this. They came out and said, the reason we're not publishing videos is we don't want to perpetuate stereotypes.
And that's why they won't report correctly on who's doing like the Asian crimes and those types of things.
Yeah.
But that's another Nuance Bro video that I mentioned. I won't pull it up right now. But he's also got a bunch of videos, and he also refers to videos from Atheism is Unstoppable, who you can't see now because he's banned off of everything.
Oh, I barely, like, when you said his name, he popped back into existence in my mind. I had basically forgotten he ever existed.
Yeah, it's weird how you get people like canceled out of your brain, and you don't even remember that you had them canceled from you. You know,
but see, my brain just flashed back to reading 1984. Like, because they did it to me. They unpersoned a person, and you just repersoned him, just like that. Poof.
So you can get a hold of him, but it's behind a paywall on whatever.
Yeah, you have to go get on an FBI watch list by
exactly
by going to one of those far right platforms that doesn't censor. Like, because Atheism Unstoppable, like,
he's a Democrat. He was a basic Democrat. He was like a Hillary Clinton supporting Democrat. And but one of the main things that he did that was so awesome, and Sean has a ton of them too, but I think Atheism is Unstoppable even went harder into these and had really well edited, well done, beautiful videos about them, was all of these Innocence Project things going on. There's so much BS in it you would not believe. There's so many people trying to argue for complete criminals to get out of prison. And watch this. Beyond Atheism Unstoppable, supporting Hillary Clinton, I'll throw another bone. I think I mentioned this before. I'll throw a bone to Kamala Harris. Even like the libertarians, a lot of different people have tried to throw her under the bus for that supposed situation that she didn't accept new evidence for a guy who was on death row. That was one of the major memes floating around about Kamala Harris. Don't get me wrong, Kamala Harris sucks. That is a lie. That situation is a lie. That Chino Hills dude killed the people. He's had 15 different chances to bring different evidence and wants evidence re-brought in that has proven failure. It is not exonerating evidence. It's a bunch of bullcrap by a lying family murderer who is for sure guilty, and he's trying to extend it again. And then people just took that and used that as a talking point to say, oh, Kamala Harris is not to say that she didn't keep marijuana people in prison for.
And this is one of those things that, I mean, it makes you so angry because corrupt prosecutions are real.
Yeah.
Like there are lots and lots of black men in prison because of corrupt prosecutors. It's just not just black men. There's all kinds of every kind of person imaginable in jail because of corrupt prosecution.
And you and I, of course, stuff, on like the weed end of things, are not one of those ever should have been done. If it's anything that has ever been just weed in history.
Yeah. But the one thing is though that like there's a narrative about like, oh, the prisons are just packed to the gills with non-violent drug convictions, where it's like, well, yeah, but most of those non-violent drug convictions were things that were tacked on to really serious shit. And like, and there's not exceptions, but there are very few people actually doing hard time for just the drug.
There's so much lying in it. My younger brother is a parole officer. He has a nightmare of a time if stuff is just drugs to get somebody in prison. I had my car stolen a couple years back, and they caught the guy and went into court. My little brother gave me all the details on it. The guy is out of prison. He'd stolen like 5, 6, 7 different cars. He had all sorts of drug history and all sorts of stuff. And they can't get him in prison. There's no room in prisons, and they can never even make anything stick or anything like that. So when people are there, they for sure, maybe like back in the 80s or something, there was some heavy-handedness, especially in New York with Bloomberg and Giuliani and stuff like that. Or the 3 strikes rules. But those were the blue states on the coasts. But other than that, most other cases and most other situations that are still in prisons right now have something going along with the whole story. If you look into the whole story, there's going to be some sort of sense in it that isn't just complete stupidity, because cops are just big dumb stupids.
So here, like, you said something that rang a bell, and I was just scanning KSL because I can't remember where it was I read in the news, but it's just a recent story within, I think today, where some guy did something, and then you look at it, like in the report, they show his criminal record, all the stuff he's been arrested for inside of the last 6 months, and you're like, what was this?
How is he not in prison?
So I didn't find that, and instead you were talking exactly what we're talking about just today. KSL, scrolling down. West Bountiful man arrested accused of assault using little drug runners. A Davis County man was arrested this week after police say he beat a teenager and used, quote, little drug runners to distribute marijuana and THC cartridges. So if this guy gets arrested and goes to jail, and I don't know his race, doesn't matter, but let's say he's black so that it matters to the left, and they say, aha, here's another guy. He was just doing something white rich people do. It's like, no, this guy was engaged in a criminal enterprise and was a violent dickhead. Oh, wow, he's just 18, some kid. But like, yeah, that's exactly it. If this guy was just walking down the street with marijuana, none of this would be in the news. He'd probably you get a ticket. I think you get a ticket like when it's just weed. Like, at least that's how it used to be. I mean, it's all but decriminalized now, I think, unless you have huge amounts. But like, yeah, like even back like 20 years ago, if you got caught by the cops with a bag of weed, unless there was something else to hold you on, you weren't even going to go to jail. It was a ticket. You'd show up. I know
like,
a million people who went through this.
You said is that they'll bring up a lot of comparison cases and say, this guy had a bag of weed and this guy had a bag of weed. 2 years for this guy, nothing for this dude, probation. And then you look at like the details of the case after somebody's giving you the piece of propaganda, if you really look into it hard, and you find out that the other person had it pled down to just that when it was in the midst of a robbery, and the other person had it that was some kid who got caught with weed, so it's like you're not comparing apples and oranges. And
I mean, that's another thing. Like, I just saw today where I can't remember where it was. I think it was TYT. They're talking about how the right wingers have all the guns. It's like, no, the right wingers are the people who register their guns. And like,
So many
and
like freakonomics points about like all that sort of stuff.
yeah, where it's like, no, like, and again, this is one of those things where it's like, I mean, nobody wants to get into the numbers, where, because like, you know, you point out the raw
Numbers are
numbers,
racist.
and yeah, the raw numbers are that, you know, African Americans account for the lion's share of murders, and then so they say, oh, don't say that because people are going to come away with the wrong idea that African Americans commit more murders on in general, you know. And it's like, and this is where you have to get really down to it, where it's like, well, no, it's because the fact is it's a tiny subset of the African American community. And, you know, like, I can't remember the exact figures, but like, I think Thomas Sowell mentions this somewhere where he's talking about like gang violence in Latin America, where they talk about, you know, oh, the murder rate in Colombia is this crazy thing. And so like, if you just come away with that number, you think that everywhere you go in Colombia, there's just gunfights everywhere. He's like, well, no, you know, 98% of the murders happen on 2% of streets, you know, where it's like, this is highly localized, and there's a few people who are accounting for the lion's share of the violence. And so, and that's exactly, and all this is stuff that you can't even get into with people, because as soon as you start talking about, like, you know, that figure that you can't even talk about,
It's all politicized.
it's totally
Everything is
politicized, where it's like,
politicized to the point that we can't do anything about it. Because we can't even actually talk about or know what the problem is. It's too political.
Yeah, and exactly, because like, you know, I mean, it's very commonly cited that like, well, you know, most serial killers, most school shooters are white people. Now, that, again, that data might not really bear out, but let's just say it does. I'm not like, I don't walk around going like, my God, why I'm white.
Yeah.
Am I one of them? No, who thinks that like that? Well, far left Marxists and neo-Nazis and white supremacists
and
do.
the Marxist resolution of all this is because it has to be systems and not people, is you can't prosecute any single person for doing what their economic historical situation, their dialectical materialism made them do. The answer to it is to make society equal, and all this stuff will go away. And it's just such a ridiculous kind of, well, that's their historicism. That's their predictionism of what people and humans will do just based off of some money situations. And it's crap. It's not science. It's just not true.
Yeah, and we've seen it, like, and we've seen the horrible reality of the not science of it all bear out in that, you know, because BLM, starting after Ferguson in 2013, said the problem isn't all of those evil Republican things that people point to, like fatherlessness, you know, or all of the endemic problems that in these communities. They say, oh, no. BLM came and say, like, the problem is the police. The problem is the policing.
And
BLM successfully got
police.
What you're in danger of is the police, and just the presence of the police. That's what's, you know, in that classic Marxist thing. Oh, they're there to suppress them. And if we just got rid of the police, the problems would go away. We have seen that the opposite is true.
Or beyond, just
it got much worse.
If we just throw a ton of money at it, it'll get it fixed.
Yeah,
well, that brings us to this stuff.
There we go. You ready?
What ended up happening is that you had members of Black Lives Matter organization step away in recent years due to the fact that they were paying themselves exorbitant salaries, and that led to giant real estate binges, aka, as one of the founders did when she was buying all this property, even though she calls herself a Marxist and she's super pro-Black, obviously Black Lives Matter, and these properties were being bought in rich white neighborhoods. Now, she tried to talk about how we're always advocating for Black people to buy housing and buy property because housing is a good way to fight back against white supremacy. So basically, this woman buying mansion after mansion in upper class white areas is her fighting against racism, which I don't think people who donated to Black Lives Matter, the organization, actually had in mind when they were chucking their money in that direction. And we all know that Black Lives Matter, the organization, had a great year in 2020. I know a lot of people say it was a terrible year for them because their businesses, either their favorite ones or the ones that they were owned, were shut down by the government and then destroyed by Black Lives Matter rioters. But the Black Lives Matter organization raked in about $90 million off of promoting that violence and the false narrative that they've been pushing since the organization has been founded. And this has led a lot of people to wonder where that money is going. And when you have leadership step away after paying themselves exorbitant salaries and using that to buy houses, people still still wonder where the rest of that money is going. And the state of California apparently is also wondering, and they talked about how Black Lives Matter, the organization, needs to get themselves within their normal legal compliance based on their donations because they're not revealing and disclosing this information appropriately. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with how nonprofits work, when you fall out of compliance with disclosing what you need to disclose when you're running a nonprofit, you're actually given a timetable to explain where the money is going. And the state of California actually issued them a 60-day timetable in which they needed to become current on all their filings related to 2020, the year that they made that $90 million. However, California actually went a little bit harsher, and credit where credit is due, in a state where nothing is prosecuted, in a state that basically has given in to Black Lives Matter in every possible direction, in that they just let criminals commit crimes with basically no consequences. They said, after the 60 days, just so you know, we are going to be finding the founders of the organization personally liable for the mistakes made by the organization, which is something that you almost never see happen. But again, we're talking about $90 million, real estate buying binges by the founders of these organizations, and no real explanation about how that money was paid out to that person. So of course, Black Lives Matter immediately filed all the paperwork, came into compliance with the state of California, and they showed beyond any shadow of a doubt that their organization is clean as the driven snow and would never have any sketchy situation related to their finances. No, I'm just kidding. They missed the deadline, and in order to be compliant with California, they just stopped soliciting donations on their website in the state of California and in the state of Washington, because their books, and this is my speculation, are probably so messed up and so questionable, it's easier for them to just not solicit donations so that they're outside the jurisdiction of California than it would be to probably comply with them. Now,
You know, there's something else there. It's funny because talking about like how crooked religions work, that's Scientology. This part of why they buy so much property is that, like, you know, ostensibly the tax code says like you're a charitable organization, so you cannot hoard money. And one way to spend money, like to get it off the books while saying like, well, we're not just, you know, enriching ourselves, we're just, you know, we're doing our charity, is real estate of some kind. But I mean, in the case of Black Lives Matter, I don't even think it's that much. I think they just were cynically buying themselves houses. It's really kind of hard. I mean, because on the one hand, like she says she's a trained Marxist, whatever her name is, Patrice Cullors. It sounds kind of. I would think a Marxist would have more integrity, at least like, you know, outwardly, than to just outright run a giant grift. But I think what happened is she just ran a giant grift. I don't know. It's so hard to say.
Well, one of the things that they're going to do is dodge, and there's been several other videos that have come out that they've vacated leadership of it because they're pretty sure that whoever is going to get stuck holding the leadership bag at some point is going to be prosecuted. And I won't do a ton of this, but I mean, this is a nuance, bro. You should know the name nuance ho came off of a riff from a nuance bro. This is called The Real Faces of Asian Hate, which you get all sorts of wackadoo insinuations in the media from NPR and all that stuff. But if you look at the actual details of the actual history of what's been going on, and one of the issues about all this is almost every one of these cases, if you look at the person's rap sheet who did the thing, they shouldn't even be out of prison at the moment, but they are.
Yeah. Well, the other, I mean, again, the great irony is that the left says that it's the conservative right that is racist against Asians. And meanwhile, it's in the last 12 months or so that the left decided that Samoans, Tahitians, Marshallese, Caledonians, Maori, Cambodians, Koreans, Mongolians, Bengalis, Punjabis, Pashtuns, they're all one kind of people in a group with Africans, but the right is racist.
Yeah. And also that big group of AAIPI or whatever, they're white adjacent when it comes to college admissions. In fact, they have stricter restrictions when it comes to college admissions. Found that upward of 75% of the news stories identified perpetrators as male and white in instances of physical verbal assault.
I don't remember who it was that I watched somebody reporting on a report, but it, like, you know, it was one of these phony wokey, like, oh, we're going to investigate the data. And they're like, we only found 3 cases, where it's like literally like, it was like, we counted, like, you know, we stopped at 3. Like, that's basically what it came down to. Like, oh, we stopped at 3. And like, that's literally how they do their numbers.
Yeah. So I'd suggest watching this video and getting more nuance, bro, about the situations of who's been mostly committing those violent crimes that have been on an uptick that are then used to push more types of the proper form of critical race theory. It's so annoying, but
because it's funny. It's like I don't know how. I mean, again, well, it's because it's an article of faith for them. But like, it doesn't matter what you say. You can't convince them. Like, I can look at the statistics because I understand enough about genetics and history and culture and society and economics, which is not very much. You don't have to understand very much. That there's a million kryptonite stats that you're a racist for bringing up. They'll show all the numbers of African Americans compared to white people, and they say, "See, this is proof of white supremacy and systemic racism." Blah blah blah. But you can just play the same game where it's like Nigerian immigrants
yeah,
compared to African Americans. If you follow their methodology,
Nigerian,
you can only come to the conclusion that we are a Nigerian immigrant supremacist society that obviously systemically favors Black Nigerian immigrants over Native African Americans, blah, 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 blah. If it's it only makes sense
Nigerian
when you
immigrants do
begin with
better
the
than
article of faith.
our group. They do
Yeah.
better than us.
Yeah,
than
exactly.
the
Like,
white
I mean,
males or...
yeah, we live in a South Asian, Korean, Vietnamese supremacist society.
And that's true for
Like,
females too. Just
oh,
this year it came out that
and
females of those categories do better than white males.
God help us all if we play this game with Jews.
No, don't dare you. Don't you
Like,
dare.
yeah, like you want to look at like rates of divorce, longevity, alcohol use, going to jail, like every single measure. If you want to plug in Jews and play that game, and then let me know how that goes for you when you're talking at work with your coworkers at lunchtime.
So this is Hassan Piker, who I would describe him as an idiot who somehow people
Yeah,
listen
no,
to.
I think he's unironically evil.
He's also dumb as a
I don't know. He
brick.
might be stupid, but yeah, I don't know. I guess.
So
It's hard
right
to
now
say.
we're in the week of Joe Rogan getting attacked because it's totally about him being racist. No, it's because they're coming after him to try to get him off of the air because they don't like how much institutional power he has that they didn't that other mainstream media
and their bluff has been called.
Yeah.
Because this is the thing that they don't realize about trying to lie about Joe Rogan is that Joe Rogan's fans listen to Joe Rogan. So like just like when we were Mormons and some non-Mormon would come and tell us stuff about Mormonism that wasn't true, and we'd be like, you jackass, you bought into a weird propagandistic lie. No, the same thing is true of Joe Rogan. Like, all you have to do is listen to Joe Rogan, and then he's not racist. It's that simple. Like, all you have to do is listen to Joe Rogan talk about COVID, and then he's not encouraging, spreading, whatever, all these lies.
Yeah.
And so, like, the whole thing is a big bluff.
Yeah.
And apparently the data is in. Joe Rogan lost no subscribers.
Well, they're still trying to get him, and they're trying to blame stocks dropping in Spotify for it, even though they weren't related. But they're trying to.
It was dropping before then.
But these idiots, the Young Turks, you can see him just in real time trying to wrestle with the pickle he's gotten himself in, because him and his channel has dropped all these different words all along too, especially since they've been around since 10 years ago. They use them in context, but they've even done worse. He's now doing a current show with Ethan from H3H3, who famously has some videos where it's not even anywhere near as comical use or contextual use as Joe Rogan is using. Like, Ethan drops that N-word several different times, and it's brought up all different time on their channel, but he watch him just kind of struggle with it, because he'll try to. He's advocated that Joe Rogan needs to be taken off for COVID, whatever.
In the case of, like, with Rogan, like, even all of the dumbest stuff he said, you can still just put it in the context of, like, he's literally just having an extemporaneous conversation with some guy, like they're just bouncing ideas off each other. Meanwhile, the Young Turks tell big, fat, deliberate lies all the time.
All these videos they pulled are more than 10 years. And Actual Justice Warrior channel and Atheist and Soppel did a ton of videos on how much the Young Turks lie outright too. But
And Jenks says the N-word, doesn't he? I think he
That's what you watch him in real time. Tell me if this one's better.
The past, but I know for a fact that it's not something that he does anymore. This is like not an ongoing issue. You know what I mean? Why are you defending? Oh man, this is one issue where I've always been like super consistent on. Did you see the?
I mean, he did the unforgivable thing, but I mean, he just did it, and now he didn't do it since. So this time it's okay.
TYT host saying the N-word. Is a clip of you in there as well? There's a clip of me saying the N-word. Really? It could be.
It could be.
Probably a quote, like a newsworthy.
Oh, so it's okay for you to use a newsworthy quote in context,
like a quote from a news clip or something. Like I'm.
Ethan from H3H3 did not use the word like a quote. There's some very famous clips of that going around
where I'm reading someone else's.
But even how Ethan used it, he was obviously just telling some jokes and that sort of thing.
Quote. There's no way that like people on the Young Turks Network were just like straight up saying the N-word. Like no shot. This is it. Oh, trigger warning, trigger warning, trigger warning. I forgot to mention.
I know these are like difficult words to hear, but words like nigger and faggot. You.
Yeah, this is all quotes, like reading news quotes when you're doing news coverage. Why are you showing this? Why are you playing it? I want to see where I've said it.
Run.
That's so out of context. Yeah, I mean, dude, it's very obvious that they're like.
Did you see how like straight if it was him saying it right at the camera?
Reading quotes, and I don't know where mine is from. It could be from reading a quote, or it could be like the classic. They stretched it to make it seem like I'm saying it or something, but I don't know.
Like, experience. All of this, like, it's just there's this tacit admission that they believe in magic words.
Yeah,
you know, it's so creepy to watch them go through these gymnastics, and like I don't know, it makes me insane that we still let ourselves be. I don't know, like again, like the word is magic. It's not. We know it's not. It's really just being used as a club for convenience.
Yeah, it's just
like, it's
useful.
so bad. I was just thinking the other day about like, you know, like a classic Americanism of mispronouncing, and it's not even mispronouncing, you know, just in the same sense that like ebonics is not wrong. It's just how some people talk, like, you know, because it would say Indian. The mispronunciation of Indian is Indian, because the exact same people say idiot instead of idiot, or vidya instead of video. So like what? Because you know, Indian, though, you don't say that. Like, well, Indian, because the same thing. There's the same thing with Negro and the N-word, and here I am not saying it because of YouTube, but
all the words have magic power now, man.
Magic, yeah.
And there's
well, again, like
author, the Deridian death of the author. It doesn't matter if it's in context. If you're a white person, don't you know this is on? You'd be doing it. You'd be 100% on the bandwagon of frying for it if you weren't also guilty.
And this is like the religious paradox, like because the exact same people. These are the same people who want to see Joe Rogan destroyed for saying the word, even though they said it. These are people who will say that silence is violence. Also, words are violence.
But there's also no escape. People like James Lindsay's description of what critical race theory is just anything you want to control, call it racist until you own it.
Yeah.
And you can just watch that play out in a million different ways.
And said, back in the day, we had a policy on TYT when covering gross statements made by racists that are sanitizing their quotes with the N-word. We could read the quotes verbatim. Context does matter. Cancel me if you like. Don't care. Yeah. And for the record, this is not even a thing that we have anymore. This is not a thing that the Young Turks does anymore. This is not a thing that I've done for a very, very long time for this specific reason. Like, does that make sense? Because it's not all right to say. The clip isn't even 1 second long. That's how clip chimped it is. This? Yeah, I mean, it's like half of a second. Joe Biden is quite literally more racist than Joe Rogan. What kind of take is this? And this guy, wait, so like, is this...
Joe Biden is more racist than...
Yeah, he also said the words exactly the same way. Like, and it was in context, and there was a reason to say it in context. So.
And then let's also remember, like, Joe Biden, senator, Joe Rogan, amateur fighter and stand-up comic.
Self-proclaimed idiot just talking on a podcast.
Self-proclaimed idiot who says repeatedly, don't just listen to me. Unlike who's that? The dipshit over at CNN. She's like, we have desks. Why do they trust Joe Rogan and we have desks? Our magical
So
desk.
last night I went and I participated in like an hour-long thing. It's kind of like a little bit like street epistemology. It's called like the 3 practices. I went because Marty invited me to it. And there's this whole thing where all these people are supposed to talk, put out like a premise, and then everybody's just supposed to ask more questions about the premise. And it's about learning how to talk across maybe political divides or whatever divide. In that, there was a Canadian man, a black Canadian man in there, and he said he feels unsafe in his country because he feels the fever or sickness of the United States of America is traveling to Canada thanks to the truck driver situation. Under that situation, he mentioned this big boogeyman thing going on right here. Of course, this is going to be like the image that they show. So they don't show this guy's face. And there's a reason they don't show his face, because if you showed the other side of his face, it's all completely covered up anyway. This is the one Confederate flag floating around the whole entire Canadian trucker thing. And they even had like,
it looks like the code. It's the same guy where you show the video
yeah,
where everybody else goes, hey buddy, come on, get out.
What are you doing? What are you doing? And there's
Yeah.
just so obviously obvious. But of course, the guy on the thing I was with last night said, I'm being invaded by American Confederate truckers in Canada, and I feel unsafe here. And he said that, and I think he was dead serious in his belief that that's what was happening. And I only mention all this stuff because as we go into the Brad Wilcox thing, it's all just right in the middle of like another week of, hey, we're right in the middle of big old, same old 1950s Jim Crow racism, guys. We got all these proofs of it going on when all of it is actually just hysteria and people being oversensitive to every single possible thing and getting jerked around and swung around by people who want to call things racist until they own it.
And it's easy, like it's a target rich environment because white Americans today are probably the least racist demographic in human history.
Oh, we have a proof of it. Do I bother looking it up right now?
It's just, I don't know. You have to be extremely ignorant of history and society to not understand how not racist America is.
Well, there's actually
compared to everywhere else and every time else.
There's actually some recent scientific surveys.
Well, it's probably done by racist scientists.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can find it real fast.
They talk about white science. That's become a thing now. Just like Hitler talked about Aryan science versus Jewish science. Like we're already there where, I mean, they literally talk about indigenous ways of knowing versus white ways of knowing bad. Indigenous knowing good, white knowing bad. They can't tell you what a white person is, but white person bad.
Oh, and I saw this whole thing happen this week where Ibram X. Kendi modified a clip of Joe Rogan talking to, and there's this thing, our good old new ADL.
The marginalization and or oppression of people of color, like
based on they got socially constructed written right.
It's all begging the question. It's all begging the question. The conclusion is built in, or the premise. How does it work? Yeah, the conclusion is built into the premise. It's so stupid. Like, and again, like I remember grade school learning about dictionaries and how you define words. And as a grade school, like if there was a thing like, is that a good definition? As a grade schooler, you'd say, no, that's a terrible definition. Obviously, like you can't do that. But so they to their credit reversed that, didn't they? If you go there now,
I don't know. I hadn't heard anything that
I think they did, because I remember last time we podcast, I tried to find it.
I did not,
and it was different, but I think they finished it. Yeah, the ADL is pretty crap.
Yeah,
these days. Fighting hate for good. Oh, good. I'm glad that somebody's gonna have to do it, huh? Jeez. I like how they fight hate for good. Other people fight hate for just
found it.
Other reasons.
These are the blue countries. A new study shows that America is a lot less racist than people think. And in that, man, I wish it would come over to this, but on the legend, You'll see it says
I think this is funny because all of the people who were halfway through their bachelor's degrees who told me that Brazil is way more racist than I thought it was.
dark blue is the most amount of people when polled who said they'd be okay with having another race as a next door neighbor, and all the way down to hyper red who said absolutely no way would I like to have. And then all
Oh.
that purple area is lower middle. All the
Look-
blue areas are the areas where they said no, I'm cool with it.
Talking about Cenk Uyghur, look at his
Oh, Turkey.
national people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, why are you in America grinding the axe against racism when you really should be using your position, right?
Yeah.
Shouldn't you? Bangladesh, wow.
Yep. Anyway, now we can get back to our favorite subject. So Wilcox, who isn't even a general authority, he's like almost a general authority, something over like the youth.
He's a counselor in the young men's presidency, something.
Yeah. So he gives a speech, and most ex-Mormons are mad about it because he gives a lot of those little lines about you're going to be lost without this. We have all the truth. You don't have all the truth and all that stuff. So these guys do 3 straight days catastrophizing this situation, saying that, holy cow, this speech is just the smoking gun of all smoking guns. And he makes 3 straight days out of it. And I think this is ultimately what he wants out of it right here.
All right. Does it work?
So there's the point. Stop in the middle of a call-in show where people were calling in to give their responses to this catastrophic talk. And
do you want to share where you're joining us from, or would you rather not?
I'm in Davis County. So
okay, Davis County. All right. Well, I have to make breaking news. I just got a text from Jen. Because of the call out, we have now officially broken 50,000 subscribers on YouTube. Right now, it's at 50,022.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huge thanks to Jen to flagging me for that. And let's stop going.
A Mormon said a stupid thing and you capitalized. Wow.
We can just
3 straight days of straight tubing and making it the biggest.
Getting 2,000 a month. We can grow to 70,000. And basically, there's this weird, and I'm sorry to take your time, Matt, but there's this weird exponential thing. The more popular you get on YouTube, the more they share your stuff in the algorithm. So let's just keep going. But huge shout out to Gerardo, to Kara, to Jennifer, to Brooklyn.
We did it.
This was what do you say?
Made the Mormons stupid. So like I like
the telethon stuff. The telethon.
So remember, he says that the reason that he does what he does and why they're a 501c3 and why you should send them money is that they are moving the needle, they are doing the work, they are making change. There's a million different ways that they put this to make the church better. And yet, it's obviously not working because this Brad Wilcox guy came out and said something stupid. But also, they're tacitly admitting like the best thing in the world for them
is a big dumb talk.
Is for a big dumb talk and for the church to be stupid. And I don't know. It's kind of like CNN with Donald Trump, where like the worst thing that can happen to CNN is for Donald Trump to like do a good job. Where it's like, because there's a lot of stuff where it's like, I'm no fan of Donald Trump, but like. That whole thing where all of those Arabic countries for the first time in history recognized Israel's sovereignty, like that's a big deal. And they were just like, yeah.
But there's the other problem in it when these things become activistic. I've been harping on it forever. Activistic over truth telling, and activism over truth telling. You have the incentive not just to maybe fudge some corners on stuff, but sometimes even when you're telling the truth, you got to make something that's a 3 out of 10. You got to make it a 10 out of 10 every single time. You got to make it the most. Oh my gosh, bro, sound the alarms. And
that's what makes this 501(c)(3 thing, their charitable status so sick, is that like we've said it before. It's sickening and gross, but it's the reality of their business model is that
you have to capitalize on this.
Every gay teen Mormon suicide that gets publicized,
got to catastrophize it.
For them, that's
got to be front page news.
That's subscribers.
It's ambulance.
It's subscribers and it's news. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is. It's so gross. Whereas like if he went into business and and because and I'm pretty sure like there are licensed clinical therapists on YouTube doing YouTube shows and running proper private practices. They exist.
But
why don't you do that?
the best thing that ever happened to BLM was George Floyd.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
they just got to capitalize the living hell off of that and just, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, and send the money to us. And every single time some supposed cop killing happens, it's the best thing in the world for the money and bottom line for Sean King.
Yeah.
And Sean King has to sit and scour the internet to try to find something to amplify to a level 10 anywhere to try to, because it sends money his direction. And it's one of the inherent problems of all different activism situations. And you gotta catastrophize. I keep saying that word wrong. And gotta make everything an 11. You gotta jump on it and use it as an advertisement situation. And the last thing in the world that you want is for stuff to calm down and be nice and be easy and for everybody to get along. And
Do you have the? Oh, is there more of this one?
Just a little bit, but
Okay.
just more of him saying, "Look at our numbers.
And
Look
to
at our
all of
numbers."
you, our listeners and viewers, thanks for helping us reach 50,000. I'm going to go ahead and show a screenshot of this because I'm just so thrilled. This is.
He stopped. Like, I got all these people supposedly calling in to Dr. Phil to express their emotions and feelings, but we got to stop and celebrate our.
This is a screenshot of our YouTube, and as you see there, boom,
Wow.
50,000.
Oh my God!
And we hope that it just continues to grow because that just means more and more
It
people.
won't.
What were you going to ask about the clip, or?
I was wondering, do you have the clip of what Brad Wilcox actually said? Because I haven't actually watched the clip yet. I've only read the text. But
yeah, we can find it. I just want to
No,
show
we
this.
don't have to.
Of course,
Yeah.
he has this call-in show, and he gets a black guy to call in, and so then of course, like the weird groveling that happens
on so many levels. It totally changes that dynamic in the relationship that you have personally with God from an early age. And so, yeah, I just wish they'd do better.
Where are you able to tell us where you're calling from, Tanner?
So I'm originally from Missouri, but I'm living in Lehigh, Utah.
Holy moly! Well, Tanner, you get an automatic invitation on the Mormon Stories podcast if you want to tell your story. Oh, you will? Okay, Tanner, you email me at mormonstories@gmail.com. Remind me who you are because I'll forget your name just because I can't remember.
Yeah, because you could really use more of these, couldn't you, John?
Because we need your story, and we as Mormons and ex-Mormons need to hear your story. And I feel I don't want to shame myself, but like I had someone DM me on Instagram, and it's like, hey John, yeah, it's great that you and Kara are talking about this. It's great that you care about racism. Why have you not had a person of color on to talk about it? And
oh my God.
Because I don't have someone who lives close that can that can speak from that community, and so I'm embarrassed by that, but I'm also so grateful you called. I wish we could have got Faith in earlier, but I'm so glad you called, Tanner, and right now you are automatically accepted to come on Mormon Stories and tell your story. So
appreciate it. Really do.
All right,
Oh
so glad to know you're here, and I look forward to meeting you in person, Tanner.
Absolutely.
All right, Tanner, thanks for joining us.
Like this whole time, there's a guy I met on my mission field. He was a member in my first area, and he was a black Mormon convert. And I don't know, he's a wonderful guy in a gajillion ways. Like I've often said that he is like the best Mormon I have ever met. Like as far as like faithful believer, like he's totally into it and actually lives Christ likeness. I could tell a gajillion stories about this guy. And he's a black guy from Tennessee. And I have talked to him about Mormonism and race. And like John Dehlin has no inkling about like the depth of thought that actually exists out there in the minds of African American Mormons. And he's not, but what's worse is he's not interested. Like that whole time, that's part of why I laughed so hard, is like in my head, I imagined this guy I'm talking about in a room with John Dehlin, and immediately I just thought like, oh my God, I wish I could make that happen, because like John Dehlin, he's just so entirely out of his depth in every single way compared to this guy, and it's just like, oh my God, and then just like, and it's the tokenizing, and it's so
there's such an awkward way of, and it happened in the thing I talked about last night too, where this guy was talking about these Confederates are attacking my country. And all these different John Dehlin types just came on and said, thank you for teaching me about what it's like to be in the racism in Canada and what the Confederate flag means that I am trying to learn and understand that I can't understand. And the way they do it, in my mind, I'm just thinking to myself, you're saying thank you like this is a new thing. You're pretending it's new right now, but it's not new. You guys are guys who've been in these types of circles 50 times, and that's now your programmed way to respond to that. It just give some sort of nuanced, weird, white Robin DiAngelo response to that you think you're supposed to give. And not saying that guy. I mean, what that guy was saying, he seemed perfectly fine, and rational, like everything he was saying. Nothing was wrong with the
makes sense.
But the way John acts with it, to me, if I were them and I heard somebody talking like John talks to me afterwards and starts acting in that way to me, that would make me feel 1,000 times more awkward than. But that's me. I can just imagine.
But the other thing about it that, like, I mean, and the way that, and it's not just the way they talk about black people, but the way they talk about gays and women and everybody, all their marginalized groups in church.
They're just a group. They're part of the group.
Yeah, but like the miracle of forgiveness is like springs to mind, where like, because Mormonism is pretty total in its condemnation of humanity, you know, and it's like, you know, the only analogy I can think of where it's like, you know, if we take the whole Mormon thing at face value, it's like saying like, well, white people go into the 5,000 degree fire and black people go into the 6,000 degree fire. It's like, you know, I don't know if I'm getting this across.
I know what you're saying.
But yeah, but because it's like, and because I mean, you know, it's too simplistic to say like, well, it's not like white people just feel like, oh, I just walked around feeling like $1 million because like, oh, I'm white, straight, and Mormon, everything's perfect for me. Like, no, I felt like a piece of shit, and I hated myself, and I despised my sexuality, and I despised myself for having sexual thoughts, even though they were all perfectly ordinary, appropriate, straight sexual thoughts. Like I had experienced all of the things that they claim. Like, I mean, they talk about like, oh, the way the Mormons do this to gays. It's like, well, I got it too. And like, yeah, like, you know, 5,000 degrees versus 10,000 degrees. It's instant death.
If we're going to talk about, and we viewed things at all for real, like groups, like we're all part of this group and we can just like point to the oppressions of what happened to us as this group. You always have the feminists who talk about, oh man, we had these tough time in history. We were treated like secondhand citizens because some odd number of you had really bad things happen to you. And black people with the racism in the United States and the slavery, like how many slaves were freed at the time of slavery? Like 4 million or something like that. And then
there's the total number of, I think it's like 400,000. That was the number of people imported from Africa. I think something like that.
I think by the time they were freed, there was some millions.
Yeah, so, I guess.
And then there was people in the middle of that time. So if we're like looking at things like that, I can think of a few tens of millions of white guys like us who were marched in the machine gun nests and didn't get to experience any life after 18 in the 19th century. But no, that doesn't count as like a group thing to put together a thing. But at the same time, I would never, when I go and watch World War II documentaries, I don't sit there and go, look what they did to us whites marching in those things. I watch those World War II documentaries and just feel complete compassion for the other people, not me, the other people going through that horrid experience.
Yeah, I mean, like I read about World War II voraciously as a kid, and that was one of those things. Like, for one thing, I had the personal thing, like, you know, where my nearest blood relatives that fought in World War II were German conscripts. You know, like, so I had to, like, you know, as a kid, you know, I had to kind of deal with that, which wasn't really that hard once I read some books. Like, and you know, by the time I was 16, I had read a gajillion books about World War II, but I read and World War I, but I read All Quiet on the Western Front, Das Boot, Samurai. I read about Japanese pilots. I read about, you know, Turkish soldiers in World War. And anyway, like, very quickly, like, the message was very clear. Like, oh, this isn't good guys, bad guys. It's not black and white. None of it works like that. You know, it's about young men mostly being sucked into a thing that's way bigger than them. You know, and yeah, and these idiots, the John DeLinns of the world, want to make it into like this simple, you know, white hat, black hat, you know. like a Western movie. It just never works out like that.
I think this is supposedly the clip.
Let's see.
So we are now in the P, which is priesthood, the P. So we've got 3 letters left. We're at the P. And I'm just going to let everybody know this is for sure going to be one of the most polarizing and controversial.
Oh,
it's the big one.
Trigger warning. Trigger warning.
What was that? I'd put it in from Inglourious Bastards. Oh, that's a bingo. You know, we got one from Ghostbusters.
Parts of you.
Yeah, that's the we got one beer. They sit around watching it.
Entire talk. Am I right, Gerardo?
Yes.
Okay.
Just put your jaws down so it'll save time.
Yeah, just go ahead and put your jaws down now. So
Get ready to be catastrophized. Get ready to be catastrophized.
What is it
Me,
called
the
in Spanish?
therapist, is here ready to make you feel catastrophized. What's that?
What's the? I already forgot the word. The Spanish word for when the stress is on the third to last syllable.
Estrújula.
Estrújula. So catastrophize is an estrújula. Catastroficio.
Yeah.
Well, as he's talking about priesthood, he goes on a rant about blacks in the priesthood. And here is the most outrageous thing, one of the most outrageous things I've ever heard.
How come the blacks didn't get the priesthood?
That you've ever heard.
Let's see.
Until 19...
I read Mein Kampf. Let's see.
That, Brother Wilcox. What? Brigham Young was a jerk? Members of the church were prejudiced? Maybe we're asking the wrong question. Maybe instead of saying, why did the blacks have to wait until 1978? Maybe what we should be asking is, why did the whites and other races have to wait until 1829?
Holy
All right,
moly.
Well, dude, give us that reaction video.
Because my reaction isn't like one of, my God, how dare you say that? It's just like, well, you're just opening up a whole other logical can of worms. Like, did you really solve anything there? I don't think so, buddy. But well, there's nothing nefarious or evil there, or anything more evil than anything else.
It's trying to make a
Abrahamic religion.
Yeah, it's making a post hoc justification for sure. But the thing is too is I grew up in a Mormon church. I don't know if you ever heard this, but I heard apologists try to say, yeah, well, during Christ's time, only these people from this area got the priesthood and became apostles and that sort of stuff. It's an age-old kind of apologetic, like looking at like, well, how come only these Jews got it at that time, and how come only these people got it at that time? And it's just God chooses and picks and chooses during certain times, and so they try to parse it out that way and make it make sense by saying that it was always just kind of like picking certain groups for a little moment of time in history. And that's not new to me. I don't, if it's a good argument or not. I mean, I don't think it's like a great argument. I think it's
no, but here's where the Mormons have a better case though, because the Mormons get to just say like, hey, God, we don't know. God tells us to love everyone the same. And so I don't have an answer as to why, for a period of time, the Mormon church excluded blacks. Whereas we can look at John DeLynn and we know exactly why he believes his racist bullshit. Like, he talks about it all the time. Like, he justifies his racism constantly. The Mormons at least have the honesty to say, like, look, we don't like it. It's part of our doctrine, but we don't know, Whereas, but John DeLynn
will say right now, like, me being a white straight male, I understand why that's
bad because of privilege.
Bad and will scare people and should be a scary,
But the Mormons can't point at why black people bad, but John DeLynn will tell you why white people are bad.
But I mean, I will give the way the guy worded it, especially for the current day, it's going to be.
Oh, it's clumsy. It was clumsy and inartful, and you're asking for. It's like, man, God, every time I talk to my dad, I'm like, Dad, I know what you're saying, but you can't phrase things like that today.
He could have said the same sentence and just left like the word white people out of it. Might not have been so bad. Like, he could have said, but the question is why didn't God give the priesthood to anyone at all? Just like leave it at that.
Well,
and
but
that's already
the John DeLynns, the woke, have put
they'll read
everybody,
into it
including the
too.
church, into a double bind where, like, if they say, like, okay, fine, we just won't acknowledge race at all. How about that? How about we just, as a matter of doctrine, declare, you know what? God has said there is no race. That's not gonna fly. Not with the
Yeah.
woke. The woke insist on race. They need it. The
Yeah.
last thing they want is a colorblind society. You know, and because that's the thing, is like, Mormon doctrine notwithstanding, like the Mormonism I grew up with, how I was taught to live and view humanity was as colorblind, and I was told that as a matter of religion, basically. You know, acknowledging the past was different, but we don't know God, whatever. But good news, there's no longer a theological mandate to be racist. In fact, we have the opposite. Love your neighbor. That was what I was taught.
Well, if God really existed, he would have given these people the thing that I don't believe in anyway.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that was the other thing. I mean, yeah, Kate Kelly. From the very beginning, I was extremely suspicious of her, because it's like, well, wait a second. Like, you say you're a Mormon and you're really, really concerned about it, you know, like you believe, but you obviously don't, because
yeah,
your testimony's all fucked up.
it's on some Mormon expression somewhere. If people go through John Larson's old Mormon expression episodes, unless he edited stuff like this out, but you're on there. Lindsay Hanson Park says something along the lines of, I might have participated in an all-woman blessing, and you just not matter-of-factly say, did it work as well for you as it did for me? You know,
No, I just said, did it work?
Yeah,
Did it work?
it's like the whole concept is like, so now you get to be a part of the pretend thing that you think to pretend. And
you think it was stupid? Like, yeah, when it was only men that could do it. Oh, well, it's stupid anyway. But like, oh, well, now you can be in on the scam. Oh, that's what Kate Kelly wants, to be in on the scam. You know, like,
but the point
she
is
wants her slice of power and privilege and authority and influence and all the other things that you get from being a priesthood leader.
you just think like the same thing, like that Nixium or whatever, if those Nixium people or the Koresh place, and they're like, the Koresh people didn't let any other black people in to get burnt up with them. Like, how dare these Koresh people?
What? No, I thought that they were multiracial, weren't they?
I'm just saying.
Oh,
I was just saying, like, why?
I was gonna say, like, because that was one. Yeah, I think they were. That was one of his things, is that he was all like, "Hey," and what was
if you
still a
believe
pretty
something,
racist part of.
if you believe something's a great big old cult, you know, you're not usually hoping that they are including people into their cult. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is kind of like, it's like saying, "Hey, mafia,
why didn't you let in the black people?"
Yeah, like, well, yeah.
Which is basically the new Sopranos movie, which sucked my butt. Gosh, it was so dumb.
The mafia is extremely patriarchal.
Mafia's
It's
racist,
problematic.
man.
Organized crime has a sexism problem.
But Brad Wilcox watched the new Sopranos and asked, but wait a minute, why didn't the Italians let the white guys in the mafia?
That's why, like, I do believe, like, the most effective thing that can be done with these people is to mock them, because, like, you know, logic doesn't work, science doesn't work, you know, history doesn't work. Like, and I mean, and I know, like, I know from Lindsay Park's reactions that satire goes straight to the core. Yeah.
Rattle off. What are the tools of
I have no idea how this even plays out. I can't remember.
influence? I'm seeing a lot of. I'm feeling the case of thought stopping right now. What else are you feeling?
No, that's totally true. That's totally true.
Like
there's a fractal quality to, you know what I mean? There's a fractal quality to watching John DeLynn podcast, where it's like, yeah, and you could really go just at any spot and you're basically going to be in the same place. Oh, I just remembered, there was one getting out of the shower or something, and I had that thought about, like, because I can neither confirm nor deny that I may or may not on dozens of occasions taken powerful psychedelic substances, and there's always that point where, like, the trip you're on there's like a nexus with every other trip you've ever been on, and time becomes meaningless. Like, I swear there's that point in every John DeLynn podcast where you're like, oh, this is the same one as all the other ones. And like, it's almost like the ceiling room of the temple where you see yourself.
He's eternally John DeLynn. You can't un-John DeLynn him.
Exactly.
I was actually describing that to Kevin earlier because I mean I do think that he has like narcissistic tendencies and it's like something people throw around the word narcissistic a lot, but I think the real deal narcissism is you view everything as a tool for you, and it's just it might show up as an explosive way, or you know they have different types of narcissism, but I think it's just ultimately that you don't see anything as anything but something to help you meet your ends. And there's something about all of his stuff that I just see. It's like when he does any interview, the way he tries to spin anybody says is like, it's almost, you know, like when you're talking to people, you're supposed to say back to the thing to them that they just said to see if you understood it. Listen to him closely, and he says back the thing to them in a way that he wants it put out to help like make his case or to help make his a point or he repeats back to them what he wished they'd said. That's why, and this is the truth. This is what you just said is the church's fault because that's what you're saying. And and he does that.
Well, it's like I think that said it before, where it's like you know, like if you want to think about how a narcissist would exploit a new idea, just think about Cartman. But like to bear it out to the real world, like you look at all of these movements that in the woke world, you know, starting with Marxism, the original wokey,
call it
Karl
racist
Marx,
until you control it. Call it racist until you control it.
Is that
like
they
doing
are
like that
literally
on a level, not just with racism, but I'm going to call it all the things till I control it.
Yeah, and well, they're obsessed with systems of power, and they can look at any situation and see how power can be exploited. And they put it all in the context of like, oh, this is what the capitalists do to the proletariat or whatever. But like, no, you realize that like, you know, in the same way that the most paranoid people about larceny are thieves, like the reason that John DeLynn can see everything in terms of power structures is because that's how he sees everything. Is how can I turn this to my advantage? What's the thing here that puts me out in the best situation, you know? And like, and you can see that, like, I mean, there's that guy, what's his name? Joshua Slocum, he does that Disaffected podcast. The whole theme of which is basically how, you know, woke politics is just cluster B personality disorder exploded out onto the societal level. Check that guy out.
I completely
Joshua Slocum, Disaffected. Good stuff.
That's a good one.
And he's gay. He's the voice of gayness.
Oh my goodness.
So he's okay.
Oh, and he's an ex-liberal. He used to be liberal, so he's okay. It's the same way. Like,
but he's one of those guys where it's like he hasn't said like I ain't liberal no more. He's like it's one of those things where it's like everybody
lefty.
moved. Like he watched everybody just go.
And now palate. I need a palate cleanse after this, but I'm feeling a lot.
Let's just watch the milking. Like all I'm seeing right now is like cow udders. And I'm just seeing wah, wah, wah. That's all I'm able to visualize at the moment.
Thought stopping. I'm feeling a lot of like people's
look at the enjoyment.
I know their look on their face.
The excitement. The guy said a really unfortunate, sad, terrible thing, and it's
but also I just okay, so wait. I mean we did that we heard from the one black guy who said, well, they don't know what this stuff does. I'm a young. Well, we could ask Kwaku. Somebody ask Kwaku.
Kwaku already sent him a message saying that he forgives him and sees it as not a problem.
But just like you know, like for a guy like Kwaku, the question, like, so instead of asking why me 1978, why not everybody else 1829? Okay, because like I mean, and genuinely, like today, like if you're a young black guy, I mean, okay, we are both born after that. Like, you know, how much does it really affect you? Really? And I mean, I don't know. I guess because I don't really remember what it's like to be. I guess I mean, I don't know how to put this. I mean, you know, because I remember being Mormon and having a lot of weird ideas, but like, I don't know. It's almost like the Old Testament, you know, where like, well, how come there's all this horrible stuff in the Old Testament? Well, it was a long time ago. Like, frankly, 1978.
Well, there was a big feeling in the 80s and 90s that it was like that, and the internet brought it all back to life. There was
Yeah.
a feeling that it was like so far gone in the past that we didn't even know or couldn't even like put our
Well,
finger on
yeah, I mean, the way I felt like it growing up was that, in part because my family, the Mormon, like patrilineally, the Mormon, the patrilineal side, I should say, like that goes back to pioneer times. Like for us, Mormon history and family history was all one thing. So like there was never a time in my life that I didn't know about Adam God theory and Mountain Meadows and all kinds of wacky stuff, because it was stories I heard about my great grandpa and stuff that my dad heard, and so on and so forth. But then like on the like cultural broader level, going out as a missionary, you know, being a kid in school, whatever, like the feeling I got as far as like how Mormonism wanted to deal with the whole race thing is they just wished it would go away. They wanted to just leave it in the past. Like obviously as a doctrinal thing, they're in a bind because they can't just exactly undo it without undoing all, you know, you have to be careful pulling on that thread. But yeah, like, yeah, my whole experience was like, it's over. Like,
yeah, well, I guess we'll get into that here right in a second.
The reason why people would bring that up is they're asking the question, does prejudice affect the church members who apparently speak for God? Does that affect their prophecies and the doctrine of the church? And he wants to thought stop that very correct idea. Yeah. You should go down that lane. You should ask that question. He's saying, what if we ask a different question? Yeah.
How does prejudice affect that?
Someone mentioned that the people on the back are feeling so uncomfortable. And the irony is that I noticed that too, but they start feeling uncomfortable when he calls Brigham Young a jerk and not when he says the thing about the whites.
Did they like flinch or something?
Well,
so you're able to mind read that. The people in the back, to me, look uncomfortable because they're wearing stupid masks. Take off the dumb masks.
Yeah, they said their prayer.
All right, let's just hit a little bit of this one. And this is a bit about what you're saying is that like they talk out of both sides of their mouths of accepting the apology, but then not accepting it. And then what really needs to be done for a real apology.
And also, I mean, we've already hit the point, but like they are so happy and jovial, they're almost bouncing with joy, talking about like, you know, because like for example, you know,
so it's the Ghostbusters. They got one.
But like, I mean, because I was just thinking about, I mean, Waco, like the people who like bounced with joy at Waco had to be like crazy ideological wackos, you know. But like that was a real tragedy. Meanwhile, like this isn't even a thing. It's barely a thing, but like they want it to be like this way.
It works for a telethon. It's a 3-day in a row telethon to get over 50,000 bump.
Yeah, it's, oh my God. And it's just like if anything really bad had happened. Yeah. I'm trying to think of analogies like where somebody's like, I don't know. Well, I don't know.
Well, nowadays in our society,
I'm stretching it as it is.
That's part of the spirals of all of the activistic stuff. Is like the closer to better it gets, the more you have to exacerbate and scream about the tiniest little things. That's why we can never get there. We can never get there because the closer we get, that's ultimately what critical race theory is. Critical race theory is no, you guys didn't get there by the Civil Rights Act. We still want to hold on to like all of our different little things and bugaboos and all that stuff. And part of it is we need to point out to how you're still racist in all the ways that you think you aren't, and you're just hiding it, and then you're just sneaking it away. And we have these critical consciousnesses to point to you to all the little things
it's ironic, but it makes sense after reading Marcuse that it takes the least racist, most open society in the world for critical race theory to gain hold.
Yeah,
you know, that's the irony of critical race theory is they exploited the not racism of America.
They exploit that people have hard feelings about it. It's the only place in the world where there's extreme social anxiety about being called a racist or being perceived as a racist.
And again, like, I mean, our childhood, like it was absolutely a theme of my public education was talking about America's racist past.
And there's nowhere but here that could have ever gotten to that point. We're the only ones who've ever gotten to that point, and it's because of our liberalism. And now we got so close to it that people who the only people who want to keep it alive are the ones who are making billion-dollar industries off.
Yeah. Was it Thomas Sowell said racism was on life support?
Yeah.
Before and yeah, it's really
and
true.
they gave it real life support. They shocked it back into
they
life.
zapped it back into
Doing the episode yesterday.
Is that on double speed? It is.
Are we gonna go through that again? Let's hope not.
We did that a lot of people watched and tuned into about Brad Wilcox's speech to the youth at a fireside in Alpine, Utah.
Did you notice there's 30,000? We have 30,000 views on the.
Oh my god!
How excited they are about it. Oh my gosh, 30,000 views.
The views have been.
That's like 3 jazz game home attendances. I actually don't know what the
look at the
capacity of the zone is,
excitement and joy.
I don't get that face. Oh my god! Oh wow! Look at them.
And we have a Understanding Mormonism channel that's more of like the shorts channel as opposed to YouTube. We'll have more long form things here, but we chopped up those clips. We put them on the Understanding Mormonism channel. We'll probably put that in the link below if you want to check it out. So this channel, we normally obviously do longer format things. The Mormon Scoops episodes
reminds me so much of PBS fundraisers.
It is
because it is it is again because it is.
It's going to be more about the things that still need to be addressed, and we came up with the top 10 things that whether Brad Wilcox's speech kind of unveiled. Because
top 10 ways to keep this going after 3 days when it was kind of a nothing burger from the start.
About his speech necessarily, it's about the system.
I get one video, like I get it, like one video for sure.
If we could put it to them, obviously that would never happen. But if, like, what if we said, okay, John DeLynn, let's get together and make, concrete. What do you need to see from the church before you feel like
I think he kind of goes like this, he goes into, this is what I need to see from your apology. And my point is, because we probably won't be able to get through all this, is that it's basically him back to saying, what I need from you is a complete struggle session, a complete struggle session.
Yeah.
A complete denunciation of your entire religion and every single thing I've ever demanded. And then I'll accept your apology.
Well, yeah, because you'd think, in principle, you can say okay, so let's say the church had a revelation and said, okay, everybody, for reasons we don't fully understand, until this point, it was what it was. But now women can have the priesthood and everybody can be sealed in the temple. We don't care about gay, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Does he fold up shop and go home? Mission accomplished? I don't think so.
That's larger than just, this myopic view of his speech. So we wanted to talk about top 10 lists that John and I just created and have you guys incorporate your comments, questions, concerns, and just keep this conversation going. How's that, John?
Let's do it. Let's do it. All right. So
this shot, by the way, disconfirms my theory that Kara is conscientiously using one angle of her face. Because things like, I know, I'm sure anybody who's been on Facebook knows you have a female friend that thinks they have the one good side.
Yeah.
And talking about narcissism. But yeah, this disconfirms that theory. So there we go.
It looks fine from that side too.
Yeah, no, again, first off, this is one of the things that bugs me where
actually I think
say, the criticism is that people call her ugly, where it's like, okay, that's really basic trolling, where it's like, I don't believe like that. Okay, that's not gonna stick, but
it's also such an easy thing to pull out of the crowd to point at, to try to say, but it's also it's always the damseling. We've been talking about that damseling forever. Josh,
but also I just mean
really into that, the damseling and what that's all about and how many different ways it's used.
Nobody's gonna make fun of me by saying I have short man syndrome. Like if somebody threw that at me, I'd be like, okay, you're just obvious because I'm just objectively tall. And Kara is objectively an attractive person. Yeah. So and she's not. No, I mean I don't know.
But that damseling is part of the drive. It's part of the food drive, man.
Absolutely.
So Kara, we talked about what we could talk about for our inaugural Mormon Scoops episode, and we came up with this idea of top 10 problems with Mormonism, the Brad Wilcox speech unveiled. And I really think you bring up.
I wonder if it's going to be a different list than their top 10 list of problems of Mormonism.
The Brad Wilcox situation. So
an unveiled. Oh, really? Unveiled?
Basically,
he really lifted the curtain on that 1978 thing.
Look at this again, a viral thing.
We tried to begin.
I can't get over the dishonesty of that. Unveiled. There's literally no new information, no new ideas, nothing.
Yesterday's episode by saying that it's not.
Is 30K viral? I mean, I guess viral for this.
Yeah, for ex-Mormon world, that's viral.
We're not here to pile on Brad. We're not here to shame Brad.
That's what I was gonna talk about. Like, because they keep saying that. They say this so many times, and they say his name so many times.
But this is their eternal problem that they do this all the time. They try to do this. I was explaining it to somebody else that they try to be Foucauldian. They try to say systems, not people, man.
Yeah,
and they just are shit at doing it. But this is one of the larger problems with critical race theory and everything. All these different things. And they say, no, the super nuanced people at the top just always said the systems, dude. It goes down any level or anywhere of a practitioner using it, and they lose all touch of that. They can't. Yeah. They can't maintain it. They immediately go into just like zinging on the person or whatever, which is fine. You know, zing on the person. Just say we're here to zing on Brad Wilcox or whatever, but just stop trying to like do this dodge, this defensive thing of we're people because we're academic. Like, no, you aren't.
They're pulling a Brad Wilcox. They're being intellectually dishonest, and they're pulling a psychological trick. Because they keep saying, like, this isn't about Brad Wilcox, this is about the system.
Yeah, and it's
no, if that were true, Brad Wilcox would have been quoting or reading out of something. You have to keep saying his name because it was very clearly what Brad Wilcox said. And it's not what the church says. It's not the system.
That's not something out of any book
that's not
or anything like that.
Yeah, that's not something you're gonna get in any lesson manual. Which is why they don't want to let him do that, because they say, "Oh no, you can't walk back the system."
Some people, I mean, they're trying to make the point that some Mormons sort of had this idea, and I think that's true. Some Mormons sort of like had this idea, but the way he framed it and phrased it, I think he even says it exuberantly because he thinks he found like a thing to like think of this. I'm going to blow your mind with this, you know, and because people don't say it that way, but there's. The other reason why they got to blame the system is because what they're trying to control and get a wrangling on and blame on and call racist until they control it is the system.
Yeah. Yes.
Really, I think I'm going to make.
They don't want to call Brad Wilcox racist until they control him. They want to call Joe Rogan racist until they control him, but that's because Joe Rogan is the system. But these guys want to call the Mormonism racist until they control it because what they're after is the church.
That's one thing that's pretty nuts to me is that, like, apparently, like, Joe Rogan gets 20 times the viewers as CNN.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
It's incredible how much CNN sucks. So many different people have said on Twitter over the past couple weeks is like the question isn't why are people turning to Joe Rogan? Like, why is that Joe Rogan's fault? The question is why is the mainstream media so shit that nobody's listening to it or liking it anymore? And it's not because they're getting sucked away. It's because you suck. It's because you suck.
Yeah. No, it's fun. And that's one of those things. Jimmy Dore goes on about it all the time, where it's like a professional fight commentator and joke teller and former television actor on the fly is a better journalist than CNN.
Yeah, that's so true.
And like, man, that's got to take the pants off of your ego if you're at CNN.
Well, the problem is with CNN and so many of those other places is any one of us, if we were put through their same constraints of what they're allowed to say and not allowed to say and what angle they're supposed to give, we'd have a hell of a time. We'd have a hell of a time trying to make any sense out of it too.
That Brad is part of a larger system.
For sure. Yeah.
And Brad reflects the system.
It's so deep, man. It's Foucauldian deep, dude.
Yeah, system,
man. Everything's a prison, man.
I noticed like the way Christians use the word culture and the way wokies use system, like it's very similar, you know. It's like that, just that. And I'm trying to think. It's like the way Scientologists use like WOG world,
or
you know, where
it's the big
or patriarchy, or Zion. It's like it's this word you get to just throw out there that explains all the things you don't like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to mean anything.
And it's the thing that must be changed. And what must be changed about it is I should be in charge of it.
He isn't the problem.
Right.
And we tried to begin our episode yesterday with that. And so, like you said, Kara, we released the episode. It's received 30,000 views.
Again, that's like the third time.
It's really remarkable.
You said it 3 times now.
And interesting that episode was. As you
30K.
The amount of times you've mentioned it has gone viral. You've said it 30K times now.
Mentioned, Kara, we went ahead and released we released the full fireside broken up into 9 segments.
That's another thing that gets pointed out so much too. We sort of said it with Sean King, is that everybody wants to show as many people as possible the offensive thing. Like, everyone look at the offensive thing. Stop and look at the offensive thing now.
Yeah. Is this a new steak center? That looks really nice. I don't
Yeah.
remember the
Flowers.
buildings I went to church in. Yeah, they
I
didn't
wish
have
they could do, like,
floors and what's that called? That's not an alcove. What do you call that? I don't know what the architect
stained
calls it.
glass windows, man. I wish they had stained glass windows.
Oh yeah.
I go to the big old cathedral with the girlfriend, and it gets boring, but sometimes I can just sit and look at the murals for the whole entire time. And
yeah, no, like it takes you a few Sundays of Catholic church to get through looking at everything in the room. But I remember in Mormon church counting ceiling tiles.
Oh yeah, me too.
Just out of desperation.
Oh man, I can remember every inch of the church that I was in growing up. I can remember every inch of it, unless they remodeled it.
I remember the sensation of the carpet. Like there's a particular carpet. There's an odor. There's a
Sitting
smell.
at one point or another in every single pew. Like at one time we were in that pew. One time we were in that pew. One time we were in that pew.
And then I remember about how because remember the rooms had that like it was like carpeted halfway up the wall, and there would be that piece of wood. And then because I remember they got chairs where I would try to lean back in my chair, and like I don't remember exactly. I just remember leaning back in my chair and feeling that prickly carpet through my shirt and that piece of wood making it so that it was uncomfortable for me to lean back.
Yeah.
Oh, weird memories.
I'll say this to you, Mormons. There's stuff I can defend about you, but like your choices like in art and decoration, no, I can't defend about you. We could have done so much better. Like if they had done real work in making every single one of those things as truly beautiful as possible, kind of like in the European style that makes people just want to visit cities.
Yeah.
People just want to visit cities to see this cathedral. And
you don't have to make it gaudy or ostentatious.
You could just made it beautiful, and that would withstand centuries.
A Ramada Inn had more interior decoration than the steak center that I grew up with.
It's so funny too, because so many Mormons get that aesthetic, and you go to their house and like you walk. My parents have it. Like you walk in the house, and in 2 seconds you go, "This is Mormon," and it's just the feeling of this exact room right here. It's like weird white walls, maybe a flower, and that's it. And then I don't know.
Or understanding Mormonism.
What I missed, or what I thought the church, like if they had a shot to keep me, it would have been with music, because like that was the only thing I enjoyed. But like
any artful thing, like if the paintings, well, some of their paintings were intense, but they kind of chose one guy who liked to draw buff people. But their paintings, they could have gone farther with. They could have done the architect. I mean, they obviously could have done way better with architecture with all the money they have and all that sorts of stuff.
Yeah,
and
like
I mean, the original temple was cool. Like if they just kind of like kept on that same path and made a bunch of different ones like that, there'd be something super interesting.
Somewhere I know there's a stained glass window of the first vision. Like why couldn't they do that? Other than like the only reason I think they can is one, I guess, like money and like, well, that's what Catholics do, and we're not going to do that.
I guess something was just recently lifted about like you can use more instruments, different types of
instruments. Guitars.
Yeah.
Should we see if they'll let us back?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, man. My mission president. This is one of the ways I was luckiest in the world. My mission president allowed us to have a guitar, and we couldn't. They were intense about like listening to music, but we had our own music, and so people would want to be around me or my other friend because we had guitars that could kind of like do the music for them. But we used those guitars in ways that like those guitars were useful as missionaries. I'll tell you right now. Well, obviously nowadays they do, because we see all this stuff with missionaries doing dances on YouTube. I'm like, why are they doing all these dances on YouTube? I couldn't even listen to a song, and they're practicing out whole entire dances for.
Meanwhile, this is a direct quote from my mission president in a private conversation. He said to me, "If you're having fun, you're not being a good missionary."
I had a pretty cool president, both my presidents, and my first president, he would take, if zones performed really well, he'd take the winning zone to like a G-rated movie.
My mission, like I don't know, like I've said it before, I love my mission president as a dude, but he was just a terrible mission president, just really terrible.
Both
And
of my
'cause
mission
part of it
presidents
was
were
that he had
terrible
a,
mission presidents. They were nice guys, but as far as they kind of just were flighty and didn't know what was going on. Your guys probably
oh no,
terrible
my
the
guy
other
was
way, dude.
opposite. Like he was way too involved. He micromanaged.
Both
to
of
the
mine were
point of, yeah.
flighty. Both of
Oh
mine were
no,
way too
we
flighty.
that's what everybody in my mission would have benefited if my mission president had just backed off.
And my first mission president, being the nice guy he was, and the guy who was trying to help people, we had opposite land in my mission. Except for a couple Pharisee types who went and like begged and pleaded, and they really like, I'm sure a John DeLynn type, like without embarrassment, went and pleaded for positions and jobs, like to be a zone leader and that sort of stuff. But other than that, my first mission president only chose fritos as leaders because he thought putting people who were struggling as leaders to be the top guys, it would be like a call for them to whip it up and get it together. And
what is the etymology of frito?
It's just fried. It's missionaries.
Frito. Oh, it is just
missionaries
frito.
made it up. Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought it might have been a Spanglish or something, but
there's a bunch of Spanish complete missionary inventions, and we even taught it to some of the Mexicans, and they'd use it like chupar la piña is like suck the pineapple. That's not a Mexican phrase. We use it as make out, but then all the Mexicans in Mexico City knew what chupar la piña meant, and they started using it. Like we created like Mexican idioms. And there was one other one. Oh, what Wagley and I said it. We were going to call the band. We were going to call it Freaking Domingo, because they picked up the word freaking and they used it all the time. They go walking around like, "I freaking Wagley," they're saying this stuff. But so like the story was, this lady, she was in teaching with us, and we went over to her house. We said, "Hey, I'm going to make you guys this food, but we just got to run over to the store and get some food." And we said, "Hermana, es domingo. Like we can't go there. It's Sunday." And she goes, "I freaking domingo." And this is like a lady who was she's in teaching. You know what I mean? She wasn't a Mormon. You know what I mean? But she already picked up on freaking like well enough from us.
I had a missionary. I met a guy, I should say, that served in St. Louis, and the thing he told me that he remembered from his mission was that the way the locals would say Relief Society was Leaf Society. Got to go to the Leaf Society.
There's some other ones. Maybe I'll think of them.
Yeah.
Channel. And just the P is for Priesthood episode has over 20,000 views.
Oh, and this whole thing where we enjoy the exchange of ideas and modification of language and culture through interpersonal interaction, we are white colonialist monsters.
Yeah. Look at this. Like, I thought this was on. He's still going off about how it went viral.
Like, yeah, it's, oh my God.
Church takes the video down.
He's 1,000 times worse than the quartering. Because like I can barely stand the quartering because like I get 80% of the information in his videos from the headline. You know,
Tim Pool. Like I like the info they have, but it's like we could get this in 30 seconds with one paragraph. And I have to sit through a 10-minute thing for you.
Yeah, but like this is that stretched out 100 times.
My dear friends, I made a serious mistake last night, and I am truly sorry. The illustration I attempted to use about the timing of the revelation on the priesthood for Black members was wrong. I've reviewed what I said, and I recognize that what I hoped to express about trusting God's timing did not come through as I intended. To those I offended, especially my dear Black friends, capital B, Black friends, I offer my sincere apologies and ask for your forgiveness. I'm committed to do better. Do you think he wrote that? He might not. If like there's a capital B, you might not have written that. That might have come from like the church PR.
Yeah, PR or Curtin McConkie. Somebody dressed that. I mean, the capitalization of B, of Black. That's something that's a modern thing.
Was Brad or the church forcing Brad?
Yeah.
Because clearly the church PR machine was ready to promote his apology as soon as it was made. So.
Oh yeah, what kind of monsters trying to apologize? How dare they?
Worried about bad PR.
John DeLynn wanted them to drag it out for another week.
But here's the first point I want to make. This is not about Brad Wilcox.
Yes, it is. You
Whoa,
keep
whoa, whoa.
saying
Super Chat
so.
going, slow down.
Whoa.
It's not about Brad.
But beyond that, they do want to try to shift and put it about the church. There's also a defensive level in it. They want to act like, hey, we didn't just do everything that we just did for the past 3 days.
Yeah.
Brad
We're not
Wilcox,
singling
right?
this guy out.
But John,
like
wait,
we are.
nothing Flip and I have talked about has been about John DeLynn.
It's not about Brad Wilcox. Brad Wilcox is a symptom of a much larger problem. So today's episode is to really cover that, and it's to kind of try and explain it. So, Karen, now what I want to do, I've come together. You and I kind of came together with 10
Are
problems.
those their cards? Those are their title cards.
And I just want to, I'll present them to you, and then you can either ask me questions or respond. Is that okay?
Yep.
And we'll try and be as efficient. We'll try and do this under
They have
30 minutes,
more
45 minutes or whatever.
title
I was thinking
cards?
like
I was hoping they did.
Sort
a
of,
scoop,
20 minutes.
a scoop. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
And by also just at the top of the program, I wanted to announce that super chats are a great way to donate to the podcast to get your comments highlighted. I already want to shout out to Matt. And the comment, like,
So the first
Another
problem
great
that
way to
Brad
donate
Wilcox
is to just give us money.
unveiled is the following: is that the Mormon Church has a doctrine and a theology and a bigotry problem. So, what was wrong with Brad's talk? Okay, there was racism in it, there was misogyny or anti-feminism in it, there was severe
Those are the
anti-Christian
same
rhetoric,
thing, by the way,
being
aren't they,
inferior,
John?
or just completely invalid. And then there's a lot of anti-ex-Mormon or anti-Mormon apostate rhetoric, and there was some deception regarding church history and Joseph Smith.
I get very, very offended when Mormons say offensive things that ex-Mormon. No, I don't.
Yeah.
Those are at least 5 things that I unveiled, in addition to sort of an inadequate education system that manipulates, distorts information, coerces through emotion, and manipulates the youth. And
When I'm on Twitter,
What would it be like to manipulate people with emotion, John DeLynn? What kind of person?
I see on Twitter all the time, like these super Christians, and like there's all sorts of Christians who think they must call out and call to repentance and call to baptism any person, or they're not being like a true Christian.
Yeah.
And when they do that, even James Lindsay's gotten really upset with it lately. But when they do that, I just go, okay. And move on with that.
Oh yeah, no, I'm like, cause like usually I'm like, I'm happy to talk to them, and they're usually not happy to talk to me after very long. Like, because I am one like, maybe you'll be the one.
Like, well, we can move on to my friends and talk about other stuff too. And as far as your Christian repentance thing, I'll just say, okie dokie, I'll take that into consideration.
Yeah, but usually, because the thing is like, I mean, the part where they get mad at me is like, wow, I've heard that one. Sorry, that one's not new.
Well,
I can tell you why I don't believe that one, but like I keep thinking like maybe one day I'll hear the argument for God that I'll be like, okay, that one's new. But
so,
that's the only reason that's part of why I like to talk to him.
But that's not Brad. Brad is simply a product of that system.
Yeah.
And
all products of the systems, John Lynn. Don't you know that your white maleness, patriarchy is just a product of the system too? Like you are a problem of the system, and you are the exact exemplary vomiting of the problem of what the system puts out into the world. That should be dismantled and removed and decentered.
I don't believe that there wasn't a black Kara that he could have hired for Kara's job.
Yeah,
and
he's problematic, part of the toxic problem, and he can't get outside of it. There's nothing he can do to get.
I mean, so all of the biggest names in ex-Mormon feminism basically don't talk to him.
Mm-hmm.
So who's the anti-feminist misogynist?
And the homophobia or the anti-Christian rhetoric, the anti-Mormon rhetoric, that's Mormonism.
And may I quote Brad, what he said?
That's Mormonism.
What you are is white male patriarchal Western European chauvinism. You're part of the system. You need to go away.
Like
you need to go away.
Had sacrament meeting, like what it started with the prayer, and then they're like, women shouldn't be allowed to be doctors. That was part one. And then no, none of this was the case. Like, this is what Mormonism is. No, it's what Mormonism is not. Like, they really go to great lengths to not be these things.
Like this BYU student was separating God and Jesus. Who taught you to do that? It was Joseph Smith. May I use that same analogy? Who taught Brad to do that? It's the church leadership. It's the system that he was born into, raised into, educated in a church education system. This is, again, just a product of this design. This is not like a cog in the machine. This is the machine.
Yeah. And Carrie, you made the point that this is Mormonism. This is the true Mormonism. that Brad
This is
revealed.
the real
So he didn't
stuff.
betray the Mormon Church. He didn't mislead us about Mormon doctrine, theology, and cultural perception.
Zach
He
De
simply
La
revealed
Roca and John DeLynn are just two peas in the pod raging against the machine
Raging on behalf of the machine.
and making money at it. Like, at least Rage Against the Machine weren't a 501c3 rock band. they paid their taxes.
That would have been funny as hell. They should have tried that.
So
I think you just came across things that's kind of like the NFT workaround stuff. You just came up with a workaround for some bands there. I think like we are a not-for-profit band, man. Like we're here for healing. We're healing.
Yeah, no, we can do everything Mormon Stories does with music.
Yeah.
You know, what is he? I keep trying to, I don't remember exactly how he puts it when he talks about his product. What is it? He makes a space. He makes spaces. We can do that with music. Dismantles patriarchy. We can do that with music. Yeah, 501c3
is. But the problem is we also know that Brad has been teaching these things forever, right?
Yeah.
And that this is what the church education system teaches. This is what prophets and revelators teach. This is what Mormon scripture teaches. This is all baked in. So what was the problem?
It's that it was like released on the internet.
Yes. The problem was it was recorded and then released on the internet. And that's how we found out about it. Like for how many decades or centuries have talks like this been happening in firesides, behind closed doors, in seminary buildings, in institute buildings, in Sunday school rooms.
They were being secret.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Everybody's
nobody could just walk into any one of those. Like non-believers can walk into any one of those meetings.
I was
they can't walk into the temple, but any one of these other meetings you're talking about, non-believers are invited.
Well, yeah, and they're playing that game just like we were talking about earlier with Black Lives Matter, where it's like, okay, you found one. This happens all the time. Like, no, it doesn't. It objectively doesn't. Like, again, like Mormons, I think, especially in church, would rather not talk about race. I think part of the reason this guy was there talking about race is all the people from outside of Mormonism pointing at the Mormons and saying, you guys need to talk about race more.
Is now sort of publicizing that apology, which on some level is an indirect admission of a problem, right?
Yeah.
Because why would the church force him to apologize and then publicize it in Deseret News and the church news if the church didn't find this problematic? So here's the problem, though. Brad is a Mormon church leader, and the Mormon church has a history of public deception.
This all totally has to do with that.
Got this? Do you get the sense that this is the first time Brad has ever said these things to an audience? I mean, that's a rhetorical question, right? But like he tells these, he wasn't looking at notes, right? He wasn't like reading an outline.
He's like, this is a really bomb talk, and you're all going to buckle in. I've only said it 100 times.
Yeah, this is a talk he's given in seminary and institute for decades, and but more so,
he's given this talk for decades.
They found a clip of him giving it at one other thing, but I'm sure I don't think he's given this exact complete talk, but I bet you he's like maybe dropped that line because he thinks it's a hot line and now he doesn't. But
I guess, but like, I mean, I said it already, but to belabor the point, Brad Wilcox is trying to explain to Mormons why, despite the doctrine, that's not a reason to be racist. Meanwhile, John DeLynn is a racist. We know he is. He actually believes that racism is a way to view society that's good. The irony here is that this jackass is wagging his finger at Brad Wilcox for making an anti-racist talk. I hate
found from our commenters is many people in the past report that they've told Brad that this story about the blacks, this position about, the question isn't why didn't the blacks get the priesthood until 1978? The question is why didn't the whites get the priesthood until 1829?
Yeah.
He's been told over and over and over again that he shouldn't say things like that, and yet he still says it. So that is one.
I don't know what proof they have of that. I mean, there's some people who said I had him as a teacher, but
I think there's a lot of projection there. That's where he'd like to be. I don't know, because I'm an ex-Mormon, but I still I can as a principle of charity. I know that Mormons
institute. We went to years of church, went to years of stuff. This is a Brad Wilcox problem, whatever the thing he's saying right there. Like I said, maybe circle sort of the idea is there, but saying that how that was said, that's a Brad Wilcox problem.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, because like meanwhile he says like, oh, this is the Mormonism we all got systematized into systematizing. Like, no, not me. Like, I forget the guy's name, but it was the first black guy to be called as a general authority was a Brazilian guy. And he came and stayed in my house. Like the day before he went to go be like whatever ordained. I don't know. I guess so. That's what it is. Ordained. Like he stayed in my house as, and you know, and like, and I remember him and like, that was how early it was made clear to me. It's like, oh, Mormonism is open to people. Like, yeah, this history thing happened, but this is where we are now.
And that description I talk about, where I've sort of heard some people give the same explanation, although not using such bombastic language. That was not from any pulpit. That was not from any class. That was not from anything. That was like random people like musing to themselves about what they thought might have been explanation.
Yeah, no, like, and yeah, because again, I mean, Brad Wilcox is in a tough situation because he has to try to make sense of Mormon doctrine. That's not easy. But I can see that the guy is trying to twist it into a not racist position. And so I appreciate that.
That's the sin. How dare you say,
that is the sin.
How dare you say people in the past weren't racist, or this isn't a racist idea,
or this isn't or this is not a reason to be racist now, even if people were racist in the past. Yeah,
calls into question a little bit his credibility. But the second thing is kind of, and we're going to go back to it a little bit, is the context of his statement. If you read his statement, it wasn't, you know, and I've had to learn this by making mistakes and apologies myself. It wasn't Kara just like, I was racist. It was a stupid, ignorant thing to say. I shouldn't have said it, full stop, right? How is your interpretation of what he's saying in his apology?
He's saying that it didn't come across about God's timing, didn't come across as he intended. But that is not the issue that people are raising about why black people didn't get the priesthood. We're not asking about God's timing. You're throwing God under the bus by saying it was his timing. We're trying to make a point about the prejudice that is so like steeped within Mormonism. We're trying to ask the question: are these really prophets?
No.
Or are they just
this is an example of how not steeped in prejudice the church is. You guys they are reversing the reality here.
Yeah,
like it's literally the opposite of what that guy was doing.
It's not okay unless he announces that they were racist and I am racist. Full stop. The end. Please teach me, because like if you see later here, maybe we won't get this far, but it's like, give the mic to the people you've insulted and let them take over. And
incredible point. Oh my gosh. He basically said, Brad, I think you need to go back to Alpine.
You should let him give the talk.
So your apology can't be accepted unless you do stuff like this.
Follow the steps of repentance the church teaches and make reparations. So, that's not necessarily the official view of Mormon Stories podcast, but that's Gerardo's view, and he's entitled to it. The problem was Brad's wife, Debbie, responds. And Kara, do you want me to read this, or do you want to read Debbie's response?
The entire thing? All right, I can do it.
Okay.
So Debbie responded to Gerardo and said, seriously? You sound like somebody who would have been the first to hammer in the nails on Christ's cross. I suggest you listen again to the talk in the spirit of humility, and you might understand what was trying to be explained. He was not racist, nor anti-feminism, nor demeaning of other Christians, peoples, etc. I thought he explained several issues in a very clear, tolerant, and understanding manner, and was trying to explain that there are reasons God reveals things in their time. The youth need some answers in this very contradictory, contentious world that makes sense to them. And I thought he did that in a brilliant manner. I believe the Church of Jesus Saints has some truths that are not found elsewhere. Does that make other churches wrong? Of course not. We love and respect all cultures, peoples, nations, and religions. There are great people everywhere. Yeah. It is you that is small-minded and trying to stir up contention where no contention existed. People are making a huge mountain out of a molehill.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I would normally not want to bring someone's wife into this conversation, but there's
systems not people, man. Just stop with those preambles. Man.
I don't want to bring her. Oh wait, I just did. I don't want to do the thing I just did. I don't want to be here. I want to be a millionaire in the tech sector. None of this.
I would not have stopped and thought for 1 second that was like some off limits thing. There, you know.
Oh, man, she's calling my friend.
Can some brilliant internet memer do me the favor of putting John Dillon's face on the Jesus in Gethsemane? Take this cup from me.
Accusing him of trying to stir up contention, and really she's accusing us of trying to stir up contention. But that's again a redirection. And her previous text that you just read, Kara,
that was one of the contradictions in their other thing that I missed when we were talking about. They were saying nobody wants to deal with this, nobody wants to deal with this, nobody wants to be in our place, nobody wants to handle what we're handling. You do not want this. And then at the flip side, they were talking about all these complainers. They want this. What they want is this, and they're trying to get it, and they're trying to take it away because they're jealous. And like that was like one of the underlying direct contradictions of the whole entire thing. Of like, this is so hard, you don't want this, and everybody wants this because they're jealous of us.
Look how many people are into this.
Really illustrates that. She basically said Brad said or did nothing racist, nothing misogynist, and nothing demeaning of Christians. And of course, she just completely leaves out ex-Mormons and apostates.
Yeah,
we don't.
we are the etc. in that.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, we're the etc. But if Kara,
are we the plus and LGBT?
Brad Wilcox's wife is saying Brad did nothing wrong. Then why did he apologize?
Are they like at the dinner table at night where he's like, I did something wrong? And she's like, no, you didn't, honey. You did nothing wrong.
He said, well, you're already playing the double word game there. You're saying that he's supposed to do the apology the way you want him to do the apology. He's saying what he means to say, which you can say is a slippery thing, but I think he means it that way. He says, I apologize that you didn't take this how I meant it. I meant it a different way. And I don't think he's saying that. I don't think he's saying that he doesn't still see it that way. I think he still sees it that way. He's just saying sorry that was offensive to you, or the way I said it and worded it.
Yeah. Well, again, they're also being sneaky in that, like, these guys are totally in the position that, like, well, it's, Mormon doctrine is all nonsensical to begin with, But then they're like, how dare this guy try to reconcile the nonsense? Like, he's a jerk for doing his best.
And you especially got to like tackle anyone that has like any explanation for it that isn't just theirs, is that it's false and it's racist. And if you come up with like a good explanation for it beyond that, well, you got to be taken down.
We go to point 4, which is a point you've already mentioned, and it's a point illustrated by Jim Bennett. Not only is it appears like Brad and Debbie Wilcox are deflecting responsibility, they're deflecting it on God. And they're doing the same thing that the Race and the Priesthood essay from the Gospel Topics essay does.
Whose fault is it if it isn't God's? I mean, even as an atheist, like, just the idea that God is the thing that's bigger than human understanding.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Like, Brad does get to blame it on, like, all this shit went down before he was born.
But the thing is, too, is like to like try to hold and scream and cry and like make him get to the point of saying, like, admit that the whole entire thing was just because you're racist and those people were racist and that's it. You're asking them, that's a big old ask. That's a big old ask, and that it's not there, and that you're just wanting to put their feet to the fire of that to get them to demonstrate why they're bad and you're good and we should give you money.
Systematized.
You know what Jim Bennett is?
No, not off the top of my head.
So he's been on Mormon Stories a few times. He's Bob Bennett's son, and he's an apologist. And he wrote a whole entire apologist to the CES letter. And I'd say like there's been a bunch of apologists. Another guy who came on was just a recent Christian dude. And they think that their apologism isn't describing stuff. It's actually apologizing. Like that's their apology. Like, yeah, sure seems racist to Brigham Young. Sure seems racist, and we were racist. We were racist. Okay, we're racist. Carry on. And like that's their new form of apology, or whatever you call it, apologetics. Which isn't apologetics at all. It's just apologize and admit, and then
it's actually apologizing,
and then hope that they'll just let us carry on with our beliefs. Yeah. So here he is trying to force that onto Brad Wilcox.
Right, because I didn't expect Jim Bennett. Those who don't know, we've done an interview on Mormon Stories. It's the son of late Senator Bob Bennett. He responded to Jeremy Runnels' CES letter. He's a faithful, active Mormon, committed to the church. He's attacking Brad Wilcox's response, which I didn't expect. But once I read his response, it was what I expected from Jim. Why don't you read it, Karen?
You reacted with a wow. So everyone set your phasers to stunned and wow. Okay. Jim Bennett said, this apology still demonstrates that you don't recognize why your statements were deeply problematic. They're out of harmony with the church's race and the priesthood essay, which concedes both that Brigham Young was in fact a racist and that a great deal of prejudice has been present throughout the history of the church. You were almost laughing as you dismissed both of those realities in your presentation. That's simply not acceptable. Even worse, making this an issue of God's timing, quote unquote, punts all the racism into deity instead of where it belongs, which is on the backs of human, fallible leaders and members. Racism is not of God and never was, is, or will be.
Yeah.
So that's the new form of apologetics, groveling apologies.
Interesting. Just huge. But also it's kind of funny because, like, I mean, John Dehlin isn't anything that Brigham Young wasn't. They're just racists.
Yeah. But I also would say this, too, is like, to me, in the sense, like Jim Bennett, if you come to those conclusions, you've got more cognitive dissonance. Like the people who are trying to make sense of it in a different way have less cognitive dissonance than the ones who are just see it all as man racism, and that's just the whole explanation. Okay, so then why are you holding on to it, goof?
Yeah, no, and this thing always says, like, you're putting it on God. Like, where else can it go?
It's got to go there, or if it's just humans and racism, you are
Yeah.
tacitly admitting that your church.
Yeah, you're stuck with either God did it or there ain't no God.
Yeah.
I don't know
Or
where
there
you're
ain't
gonna
no
sit.
prophets. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's twice the cognitive dissonance.
Huge
Well done.
kudos and shout out to Jim Bennett, our friend, because you know you always there's always a risk of like speaking truth to power when you're in the power.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you
That's a
take
great
such
example of people
risks,
who are-
John.
Said
You're
in that power structure, speaking to
so brave.
power. So
Yeah.
kudos.
Yeah. Love you, Jim Bennett. And you just make a good point. Mormon Church, when you say things like, we don't understand God's timing, God's ways are higher than our ways, what you're saying is that God is a racist and a bigot. You're failing to take responsibility.
They aren't saying that. They're saying there's different reasons with the God that they don't understand yet. You're making that leap.
Mormon Church, and specifically Mormon Church leaders, for your stuff. And that's why you've got to just own the racism, own the misogyny, own the homophobia, own the deceptions of history, own the bigotry against Christians and ex-Mormons, and change your ways. Have a change of heart.
That's the struggle session. Like that, we will accept your apology if you come to all of our conclusions.
Yeah, exactly. Which is to accept that they're racist. Ironically, like they're in a total Kafka trap.
Well, for me,
Kafka trap, 100%.
Kara, this is way more disturbing than Brad Wilcox's talk. Have I built this up enough?
I love this point.
Okay. Here's the biggest problem I see with Brad Wilcox's talk. We know that this was a 3-stake fireside, which means that 9 stake presidency members were in the room or watching. That means that 36 stake high councilmen were either in the room or watching. It means that 9 stake Relief Society presidency members were either in the room or watching. And it means that hundreds, if not thousands, of members of the 3 Alpine stakes were either in attendance or watching.
No, you're never going to get that many people to show up to church.
One who had the idea to say, do not post this to the internet. This talk was deeply racist. This talk will be embarrassing to the church. This talk was anti-Christian. This talk was shaming ex-Mormons. This talk was
what is Christian, John?
The church.
Like he's like John DeLynn is a friend to evangelical Christianity.
Mixed faith marriages. Don't release this talk. Instead, all of those people are just like, oh.
Don't release this talk kind of play more to your idea that it's all clandestine and hidden and stuff that they're
yeah. he's just proving that the church can't win as far as John DeLynn's concerned. He is going to grind this axe no matter what.
Yeah.
You know, there's no
doing it right.
Yeah.
Presidency member from church
Graced
headquarters.
us with his presence, yeah.
Graced us with his presence, spoke truth to all of us all. And now it's our job to just go, okay, let's write that down and believe it and go and teach it to our children and never raise the concern that this was a deeply dangerous and offensive and problematic.
And that's why it is about the system. Because this is it could have not been Brad. It could have been another person from church headquarters giving the same exact talk. This is not about Brad. This is about people like kowtowing to like authoritarianism and the leadership. And
no, I think only Brad would have said it that way.
Yeah, no, and John DeLynn, who is a professional role model for people leaving Mormonism, according to John DeLynn, is, according to John DeLynn, ashamed of his race. But Brad Wilcox is deeply racist and advancing the cause of racism.
John DeLynn, you've apologized for your race, but you haven't stopped being it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that's a real apology. I mean,
yeah, it doesn't matter how many times you say you wish you didn't. You wish you weren't a white guy using the microphone you're using and taking the money you take.
You're
and yet
still
here you
perpetuating the system, man. Until you dismantle it and get out of the way and all that stuff, you're just
unite to thrive.
But if John DeLynn wasn't there doing it, any old white guy would just be there doing it because that's the system, man. Like John DeLynn's not special,
and it might be a white guy that's even more white, like less good.
His check might act like there's something special about him. But no. It would just be any old white guy because systems.
The patriarchy and just being able to say, yes, sir, whatever you say, and not say, whoa, that made me uncomfortable. Like, I am not feeling what this guy just put down. You're going to put that on the internet? The church that I believe in, the Jesus Christ that I worship, you're talking about that same guy? You think that's what he's for? I'm not for that. Not a single person said, no, whoever's turn that camera off. Do not.
What, like that would stop anything either. But I mean, it was live streamed, but.
Yeah.
The next thing. Okay.
Whew.
Point 6.
We're fired up.
Yeah. Point 6. These will go quick. Point 6, one of the next problems that this talk reveals is the church has a repentance problem. The church taught us all repentance. This is Gerardo's point. To
call them to repentance, oh ye faithful.
Yeah.
To Brad Wilcox, we all know what the steps of repentance are. It is recognize that you've made the sin, right? Acknowledge it, forsake it, make whatever, confess it, make whatever restitution you can, and don't do it again.
So they found a sin and now they're preaching a repentance process.
I have one. Let he who is without racism deconstruct the first system.
I gotta clip that.
We're at 2.5 hours.
There's just a little. There's like
Okay.
a couple more points, and they're probably dumb points. A little.
All right.
Like we all know, is that the repentance
That's
you learned
it.
for the Mormon
Yeah.
Church? Okay.
That's what I was expected to do.
So the problem is,
Oh, we know. We already know this one. You should have repented. How we mean. And here's the other one we mentioned.
a person of color. He could bring a Christian. He could bring an ex-Mormon, and he could bring a woman.
It's such tokenism. Like
Person of color.
Like,
Person of
then,
color.
then they would criticize him for bringing the person of color in to give him to run defense for him. They would call that like a tokenism, you know.
And
Say,
say,
I have been humbled. I am
Oh,
following
that's
the
what I
example of Jesus Christ, and I'm in humility trying to learn from you. People said that my comments were offensive.
John DeLynn, after he offended Kwaku when he gave that apology video to Kwaku, he didn't give the mic to Kwaku to come in and let Kwaku give an hour on Mormon Stories.
Offensive. My apology wasn't sufficient.
You saw John DeLynn's apology for being racist to Kwaku, right?
No.
You haven't seen that? Oh gosh.
I didn't know any of
Let's
this.
sit down and just wrap together
I'll
about
look it
how we
up.
can make this a happy, healthier church. And I need to sit and listen to people on the margins.
and model that. So he calls
A
all these
happy,
faithful brothers
healthier
who's sitting there in the
church.
audience.
Don't they believe that the church, like that churches by default are oppressive systems of systemic systems of systems? So
No.
a happy, healthy, again, it's kind of like
Happy or healthier truth that they will have to
like,
continue
let's make a happy.
deconstructing.
What we
Yeah.
want is a happy, healthier mafia.
Yeah, exactly. And they will say, and we do still have to continue deconstructing you and make you, burn you to the bone, and so you can be born again new under a new Hegelian process of
Children and youth and even adults through the bite model. Just to be candid, controlling behavior.
Where did you see that quote? That was almost biblical, Kara. Nobody's doing church.
Ways, controlling information so that people are afraid to learn the truth and to see the problems, which allows them to control people's thoughts, the thought stopping stuff you talked about yesterday, and then manipulating through emotion. And that's EFY, that's FSY, that's seminary, that's institute, that's what Brad Wilcox
Drive.
represents
It's
more than
THRIVE.
So to get closer to your apology, you got to stop all these programs. You got to stop the FY program. You got to stop the. I mean, I hope they're taking down like notes, because like maybe they could get to this by like the end of next Friday or something.
Just pack up, go home, give all of your money away, and we'll be done.
Yeah,
and
then
be
I
okay.
will. Then I will accept your apology, but I will also bring it up for years and years and years and years about
anything else.
How
Brad
bad you were.
Wilcox represents the bite model, where they're enforcing harsh behavior on youth, controlling the information that the youth receive.
They don't like to call Mormonism a cult. We don't call Mormonism a cult here, but we'll point out when they do bite model all the time.
Oh, that was another clip. I don't remember what it was, where it's like, we're not a cult, or it's like, we're not calling the Mormonism a cult. We're just saying they do all these things like other cults we're listing. I know you sent me that clip. We got to find that.
I think we played it on the last one, didn't we?
Oh, was it? Maybe. I don't know.
They can control their thoughts, and then using awful emotional, deceptive, and manipulative emotional rhetoric to manipulate the youth and the adults. So the Mormon Church has to fix that problem. And
So we're going to call
emotional rhetoric.
We're going to call you racist and all these things until we control you, until you do it our way, the way we see that you should do it and know that you should do it, because we have had it bestowed upon us by the Lady of the Lake what the proper way is to be. Well,
and
you have a
program?
The Lady of the Lake, the PhD. I've been bestowed the PhD from the Lady of the Lake to
stop indoctrinating its youth and its adults in unhealthy ways. And that's the church education system. And you could somewhat argue the church education system is what has destroyed Mormonism over the past. Correlation, Harold B. Lee, church education system, Boyd K. Packer, Bruce R. McConkie, David Bednar.
Erase them all. Erase them all. Erase them all.
Those are my 10 points.
Well done. Boom.
Was that too long? You're probably still getting announcements from the church. If you're still attending church, please send us every single link, or better yet,
so we can catastrophize them. I'm going to show you just real quick his apology video to Kwaku, and then we'll call it good. It's a short video. It's because he said something like, if you ever saw the
yeah, what did he say originally?
He said something about like, I cannot believe that him with this other lady saying, I cannot believe a black guy can go to this church and do all this sorts of stuff. And
not supposed to say that, John.
This is the proper way to apologize, folks.
Close up. That's his sincere face. Unshaven. Oh, he's struggled with this. Oh God,
I wouldn't be able to dig it up. Kwaku and them have highlighted it and shown it, but it was pretty ridiculous the way they were saying it's ridiculous a black guy could do this. I mean, what kind of black guy does that?
it's the Joe Biden thing. Like, if you don't vote, you're not black if you don't vote for me. Yeah,
exactly.
Apology to make. It's an apology to Kwaku L.
I still want to speed you up, John.
All my friends of color who are of faith. So last fall, in a podcast interview, we were talking about Kwaku, the Mormon apologist, and I asked the question in the interview: how in the world could an intelligent person of color join the Mormon Church in the modern era, in the Google era, given its racism and presence, racism, and that's a super offensive and rude and insulting and a racist thing to say. So I own it and I apologize for it. And I'm really sorry, Kwaku, for saying that. And I apologize to all my friends of color or any Mormon of color.
Of color.
And it was wrong. The truth is, I don't even believe that.
Yes, you do. I don't believe that you don't believe that.
Why they have faith? There are intellectual reasons. There are social reasons, there are emotional reasons, psychological reasons, lots of reasons.
Systemic reasons?
It's all systemic.
I'm really sorry, Kwaku. I'm sorry to everyone, and I'll work to do better.
Dude.
That was pretty good, John of Not Color. But I think he offends, I think he did probably offend a lot of people of color, and all the not of colors need to realize when they offend people of colors that it's very offensive to talk about colors and not colors and of colors unless you stop and apologize every so often.
And he says the church is still racist.
Yeah.
No, it's not. All of Mormonism's present racism is in its past racism, which is in the past. There's no
such thing as that. Nope. You got to fast forward everything and say that the current day thing is just the exact same thing as the old thing.
There's no amount of moving on, rhetorical, real, or in time, to where the church will not be racist in the eyes of Delinian woke types. Weirdly, the Democratic Party is immune from this weird thing where it's historical link to slavery and Jim Crow. Somehow the Democratic Party isn't presently racist because of its past, but it applies to Mormonism. Magic. All right. Every time I think we're going to keep it short, and every time we run long. I guess that's why we do this.
The dumbness runs long. That's how it goes.
Yeah. No, and that thing is like every time I always think like, oh, I didn't prepare anything. It doesn't matter. Like you just run 10 minutes of John DeLynn and we can fill 3 hours.
I actually even came into it knowing it was probably going to run long because I'm trying to tie in all these different things, because going all the way back to the beginning, we're also tying in that it's still this week, this whatever first half of February of 2022, the biggest old deal in the United States, everywhere you look, is this racism. And every single one of the things that you look at is some sort of petty ridiculousness. And that's where we live. But we got to exacerbate it more for money. Got to get that Bill Lamb house. Got to get that John Lynn.
For more information, read 1984 by George Orwell.
Anyway, thanks for attending our money marathon. Send all money. Thanks for donations. All the donations that you send are used to keep Kara working, and all the major money goes to me. But we'll send the donations to Kara, and that's how we do it. That's how we keep it not sexist. And
we'll deconstruct you later.
Deconstruct you later.